very close and historical ties since last century, since the Cold War. And we've seen both countries sort of having this close relationship through thick and thin, as what the leaders of both countries have said. Now, this also comes under great pressure, great American pressure from sanctions and very high tariffs. The Russian president is here to try and insulate his trade ties, especially economic, defense, oil, and civil and nuclear cooperation with India. On India's part, they will try and have an independent kind of strategic autonomy relationship with one of the closest allies in the world, which has had historical ties. But this pressure is showing because in August this year, President Trump had levied a punishment tariff of 25% on India for importing discounted Russian oil. Now, the American government said this is done for national security concerns, and also that the profits made from this export of oil by the Russians is fueling Moscow's war machine in Ukraine. On India's part, it says that they did this for energy security for its 1.4 billion people. But nevertheless, we've been seeing a drawdown from India's side in imports of Russian oil. And now there's been a ramping up of buying oil and gas from America. India's also in the last phases of a free trade agreement with America. Though the two leaders have a very close sort of bonhomie, bromance, which you would call last evening when President Putin arrived, breaking protocol. Prime Minister Modi was there to welcome him, a handshake, warm hug. But it will all be under a very close scrutiny from the American government. The bonhomie, the optics of this, and the substantive outcome of this summit will be closely watched by Washington and also European capitals.
Neville, thank you. Now, in less than a week, Australia will restrict access to all social media platforms for any child under the age of 16. The World First policy, which comes into effect on December 10th, carries a fine of up to £25 million if the platforms do not take reasonable steps to stop children accessing their sites. Well, Sky's Nicole Johnson has been speaking to one mother whose child took their own life after experiencing cyberbullying. And just a warning, her report contains some details that may be distressing.
Surf, sea and skating. What a way to grow up. Vesper Eating and Indy Conwell love to share their skateboarding on social media. They also coach beginners and have corporate sponsors. Their profiles are managed by their mums. But under Australia's strict new law, in a week's time, their accounts will be closed. What do you think of the ban then?
I think it's great in a way that it will keep out a lot of the kids from getting cyberbullied and getting addicted. But also for people like me, I need it for my sponsors and also coaching.
The government says it's banning access to social media for children under 16 years of age to protect them from toxic content and to online abuse.
Australia's laws shift the responsibility from parents onto social media companies. So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all of these will be banned. And what worries the social media companies is that other countries are watching what's happening here, and some of them are looking to adopt it.
32% wanted to give it up, but if they felt their friends were going to give it up as well, it went up to 61%.
Some schools are trying to prepare students for life that's not online, even though kids will still be able to use messaging apps. These girls are learning about social media addiction and how to make friends in real life.
I have a little sibling who is now affected by the ban. She got a phone last year and she hasn't got any of the major social media platforms, which is Snapchat and Instagram. And she was a very active kid, but you can see the change. She's more scrolling when she gets home, less talking, less going out. She's more addicted to the phones.
And that addiction can contribute to severe mental health problems. Emma Mason has seen it all unravel. Her daughter, Tilly Rosewarne, took her own life after being relentlessly bullied online.
Tilly, when she was about 14, had a fake nude that was sent around by a friend of hers at school in Bathurst, and that was a fake porn image. The head had been cut off, and he got Snapchat, took a photo of it and then sent it on a bus to 5 children, and then ultimately spread to about 300 children in Bathurst, and then it went to about 1,000 kids. And by 6 p.m, she had attempted suicide. For me, that was the moment where it was really difficult for her to find hope.
Emma Mason has been campaigning for a social media ban since Tilly died on the 16th of February 2022. She was 15 years old. That ban comes into force next Wednesday. Nicole Johnston, Sky News, Sydney.
And just to say, if you have been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans at any time on 116123 or email joe@samaritans.org. I'm going to move on now because Iran is facing a very real possibility of having to move its capital city away from Tehran, with water supplies running dangerously low. For 6 years in a row, the country has faced extreme drought, and Tehran is edging closer to its day zero when the water completely runs dry. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has been looking into how Iran is trying to avoid disaster and why water-stressed cities like London could be one day impacted.
Iran's capital is counting down to day zero, the day the water runs out and the taps run dry. Reservoirs that supply Tehran's 15 million residents are almost empty. This is the Karaj Dam, which supplies a quarter of the city's drinking water, now just 8% full. The president has warned that people may even have to evacuate, and water rationing has begun in some areas.
We may need to reduce the water pressure to zero during some nights while residents are asleep. This measure would help prevent water waste. However, it could inconvenience the public, so we ask citizens to ensure they install water storage tanks.
So what's going on? Well, rain should start falling in the autumn after Iran's hot, dry summer. But according to the National Weather Forecasting Centre, this has been the driest September to November period in half a century, with rainfall 89% below the long-term average. The combination of low rainfall and high heat over several years has left a huge area, shown here in red, that's in severe water deficit. It's almost 2,000 miles across. This was the Latian Reservoir near Tehran in June. By the beginning of November, it was just 9% full, with levels still falling. Climate change is part of the story, but that alone doesn't account for the crisis in Tehran. The population of the city has almost doubled from 4.9 million in 1979 to 9.7 million today. But water consumption has risen even faster, quadrupling from 346 million cubic metres in 1976 to 1.2 billion cubic metres now, as increasing wealth has bought washing machines and dishwashers. To supplement supplies from reservoirs, Tehran has had to turn to natural aquifers underground, which provide between 30 and 60% of its tap water. But that puts the city in direct competition with farmers who draw on water to irrigate crops. Levels are falling by 101 million cubic metres a year around Tehran, water that has accumulated from many decades of rain. The former deputy head of Iran's Environment Department says chronic mismanagement of natural resources has led to what he calls water bankruptcy.
These things were not created overnight. They're the product of decades of bad management, lack of foresight, over-reliance, and false confidence when it came to how much the infrastructure and engineering projects can do in a country that is relatively water short.
Government ministers blamed the water shortage on climate change, water leaks and the 12-day war with Israel. Tehran is one of several global cities vulnerable to water scarcity. Cape Town in South Africa narrowly avoided taps running dry 8 years ago after a citywide effort to save water. Even London, known for its rain, is at risk. Supplies haven't kept up with population growth and booming demand, as Tehran has found droughts that are being made more likely and more severe by climate change can expose the fragility of water supply. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
The BBC says it supports allowing Israel to participate in next year's Eurovision Song Contest, despite 4 countries launching a boycott in protest. Ireland, the Netherlands, Spain and Slovenia say they won't take part in the competition after the majority of broadcasters voted against a move which could have blocked Israel from entering. In a statement, the BBC said this: "We support the collective decision made by members of the EBU. This is about enforcing the rules of the EBU and being inclusive." However, the Irish broadcaster, that's RTE, said this: "It feels that Ireland's participation remains unconscionable given the appalling loss of lives in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis there, which continues to put lives at risk. And the RTE remains deeply concerned by the targeted killing of journalists in Gaza during the conflict and the continued denial of access to international journalists to the territory." Well, RTV Slovenia echoed that statement, really, when explaining why they were also pulling out of the competition.
I think the most fair thing would be for Israel to withdraw and, really leave the Festival of Songs be the Eurovision Song Contest and not the political place.
OK, let's take you through some of the front pages this morning. Dawn's blood on his hands. That's the front page of the Mirror, as Russia's Vladimir Putin reporting that he's morally responsible for the death of Dawn Sturges. On the front page of the Time, ministers are preparing to hand over £8 billion of Russian assets which were frozen in Britain to support Ukraine. Meanwhile, The Guardian, it's leading on Reform leader Nigel Farage, and he's hitting out at broadcasters for questioning him about claims of racism and anti-Semitism during his school days. That's leading The Guardian. The Express here, you can see it's talking about the NHS and how it's facing a tidal wave of flu cases. It's going to hit a record high this year, and that's also while there's a resident doctor strike on the way. The Metro says, welcome to the Quake District after a 3.3 magnitude tremor rocked the Lake District. And we're going to move on to the Star, finally. Joe Root on the front page, and he's rejoicing, isn't he? His first century in Australia at the Ashes. So that's just a quick look at some of the papers. Do stay with us, though, because at 6:40 we'll hear more on those papers in our news review. And this morning I'll be chatting to presenter and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Now, communities across the UK are being urged to nominate their most cherished traditions, from the ancient art of cheese rolling to the vibrant Notting Hill Carnival, for a new National Register of Living Heritage. Now, the aim is to celebrate customs and celebrations that define local life and the country's unique culture, helping to safeguard them for future generations. Let's talk more about this story with Molly Malone. Molly, anything that involves cheese rolling I'm down for, but tell us more.
Yeah, exactly. So the government say this is about starting a kind of national conversation, really, about the types of celebrations and traditions that people in the UK really value. So what they're asking people to do is have a think about what they feel it is that defines their community, send in their nominations, and what they're going to do is draw up, as you say, this UK-wide list of living heritage. Now, the types of examples, as you say, that are being talked about, it can include a whole range of things, really. So it can be crafts like tartan weaving. It could be as simple as an event like Burns Night, Pancake Day, Notting Hill Carnival. As we know, sometimes these types of events like Bonfire Night draw in tens of thousands of people. It could be cheese rolling. It could be dry stone walling. They're also as well keen to emphasise that it can include traditions brought to the UK by immigrants, so things like steel drumming, for example, from Trinidad and Tobago. And the whole idea is to try and preserve UK traditions for future generations. So they're getting people to have a think about it. The Minister for Heritage has also been saying that she feels it could help aid community cohesion. Some of it will be about money, as well, as research shows that the heritage sector brings in tens of billions of pounds to the the economy. So in terms of why we're doing it now, well, it was last year that the UK ratified the UNESCO Convention for Safeguarding Cultural Heritage. So we won't be the only ones doing it. It looks like it's going to be a global affair.
Yeah, really enjoying this story. Molly, thank you so much. Well, coming up after the break, we'll be talking about the World Cup because the draw kicks off today in Washington, D.C. And we'll also take a first look at this morning's papers in our news review. And today I'll be joined by the presenter and political commentator, Matthew Stadlen.
I'd wake up with really bad bruises and I don't have a clue where they come from. That's how I knew I'd been raped. I'm not the only one it's happened to and it's still happening.
Couldn't even move and I just remembered, sorry, I'm gonna cry.
You just have to have sex with these people just so you can be safe and not be killed.
Just thought like I will end up dead.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Today is the day that all countries competing at next year's Football World Cup will be revealed, with the draw taking place in Washington. The 2026 tournament will be the first time that 3 countries will be joint hosts. Through the spotlight remains, though, doesn't it, firmly on Donald Trump, who will be present at the ceremony. An inaugural FIFA Peace Prize will also be handed out, and the US president is hotly tipped to win. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris reports.
This is for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well.
Of all the world leaders who've been inside here at the White House since Donald Trump returned for a second term in power, no one has been here more often than Gianni Infantino.
Probably the most respected man in sports.
But he doesn't head a country. He leads FIFA, World Football's governing body. And there's been so much intrigue about how this close alliance is built between Infantino and Trump. At the heart of it is the World Cup next year, with Infantino wanting those close government ties to ensure the tournament passes off successfully, and President Trump seeing what an opportunity it is having the world's biggest sporting event He knows what Trump wants to hear, just recently publicly backing his political agenda for change.
He says what he thinks. He says actually what many people think as well, but maybe don't dare to say, and that's why he's so successful. Right. We should all support what he's doing, because I think he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
When you go all in, it can be hard to distance yourself. So there's been no hint of criticism when Trump has been threatening to take World Cup matches away from Democrat-run cities he believes are not safe.
If we think there's going to be a problem, we'll... Johnny, can I say we will move? I don't think you're going to have this problem, but we're going to move the event to some place where it's going to be appreciated and safe.
Yeah, well, I think safety and security is the #1 priority.
I asked a Seattle World Cup official about Trump disparaging them. Is your city a
Absolutely not. Our city is amazing.
Does it not annoy you?
Our city is extremely safe, and we know folks will see that when they come out to visit next summer.
They'll discover which teams will visit after Friday's World Cup draw, which is being attended by Trump. An event designed to please the president, indulging his passions. To win a peace prize, one's being handed out by FIFA after his frustrations about being denied the Nobel version. And even the 70s disco group The Village People will be there to perform his campaign song YMCA. Expect the Trump dance, expect the unexpected. But one of soccer's most prominent Trump backers told me there's nothing wrong with the World Cup being politicised like this.
Is it being a bit of a Trump show? I mean, sports are inherently, I think, political. And so, obviously with our president so heavily invested and involved, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive thing. And I'm certain that, he loves a good show.
A show that should also be about Canada and Mexico as well. This supersized World Cup being staged across 3 countries, but it all seems very much about Donald Trump. Rob Harris, Sky News, Washington.
And for plenty more on that star-studded World Cup draw and all the day's stories, make sure you check out our Cheat Sheet podcast with Anna and Kamali.
The event's going to be hosted by Heidi Klum and Kevin Hart and Donald Trump's favourite band. The Village People will play his favourite song, YMCA.
Is that right? I didn't know that detail. That's good. And we talked about Scotland, but of course England as well, wanting to make sure they're not in a group of death. They're seeded in pot 1, which puts them alongside those other big hitters, Argentina, France and Spain. But being in pot 1 apparently doesn't guarantee you from avoiding a group of death. And they really don't want to face Scotland, do they?
No, you've got to beat the best if you're going to win the competition. So play the hard teams early and then make it easier for you as you get through the tournament.
And if you scan the QR code, it's on the screen. You can listen to today's Cheat Sheet podcast in full. Still to come after the break, why an inquiry into the poisoning of Dawn Sturgis in Salisbury is laying blame directly on Vladimir Putin. And in sport action from the Premier League, as Manchester United look to move into the top 4 against a West Ham side fighting for survival.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is
eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
The founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello, this is Mornings on Sky News. I've got your headlines. Campaigners have welcomed the announcement of a long-awaited government strategy aimed at tackling child poverty. It includes greater access to childcare and scrapping of the two-child benefit cap, which was announced in last week's budget. Elsewhere, Russian President Vladimir Putin is in India, where he's expected to sign a number of new arrangements and agreements on trade. The visit coincides with continued US efforts to broker a peace deal for Ukraine, which have stalled over territorial disputes. And the BBC has voiced its support for the decision to allow Israel to compete at the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest, despite a number of other countries launching a boycott. Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands and Slovenia have all pulled out of the competition. This is following criticism of Israel's role in Eurovision amid the fighting in Gaza. Now, the inquiry into the death of a woman poisoned by a Russian nerve agent in Salisbury has accused Vladimir Putin of being morally responsible for her death. Dawn Sturgis died in 2018 after mistakenly thinking the chemical weapon Novichok was perfume. The inquiry found that the weapon had been discarded by two agents sent on Mr. Putin's orders to attack a former Russian spy. Sky's Dan Whitehead has this report.
An assassination attempt from the top of the Kremlin, with a Wiltshire mother caught in the deadly crossfire.
7 years on from the Novichok poisonings in Salisbury, the inquiry into Dawn Sturgis's death has published its findings.
Her death was needless and arbitrary. She was the entirely innocent victim of the cruel and cynical acts of others.
March 2018, it was former Russian spy Sergei Skripal who was the target of the poisoning. Two Russian GRU agents, who later claimed to be tourists, were captured on CCTV wandering the back streets of Salisbury. They're accused of smearing the military-grade chemical weapon on the front door handle of Sergei's home. He and his daughter Yulia were found slumped on a bench just hours later, but ultimately survived. More than 80 others attended A&E, with a police officer hospitalised. Fast forward 4 months, and 999 calls from Dawn's boyfriend Charlie Rowley come in. She was frothing at the mouth after spraying what she thought was perfume on herself. But inside the bottle, Novichok, enough, the inquiry heard, to kill thousands. The £8.3 million inquiry heard evidence from 40 witnesses over 7 weeks. It found that the 3 Russian agents who attacked Sergei Skripal with a chemical weapon were authorised at the highest level. They and President Vladimir Putin were morally responsible for Dawn Sturgis's death. It found there were failings by the British state in the management of Skripal as an exchanged prisoner, but agreed with the assessment at the time that he was not a significant risk of assassination. When it came to the treatment of Dawn Sturgis, the inquiry ruled she received entirely appropriate medical care and that her condition was in fact unsurvivable from a very early stage. Russia has always denied any involvement in the assassination attempt against the Skripals and Dawn's subsequent death. Despite this, the findings in the inquiry have led to fresh repercussions against Russia. Sanctions against the GRU intelligence unit responsible for the original attack against the Skripals. The ambassador summoned to the UK Foreign Office.
This report is clear. Moral responsibility lies with Putin. And it's further evidence of the shocking and reckless, hostile activity on UK soil.
For Dawn's family, it has been a long wait for answers.
Skripal was described by Putin as a traitor and convicted of treason. Yet, there were no sufficient and regular assessments of the risk he faced from Russian retaliation. As we have always believed, that put the British public at risk and led to Dawn's death.
We can have Dawn back now. She's been public for 7 years. We can finally put her to peace.
Perhaps some closure for Dawn's family and a Wiltshire city keen to move on from being at the centre of world attention. For UK-Russia relations, though, today's findings are yet another increase in growing tensions. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
OK, it's time now for some sports with Jackie.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Typical Touré, absolutely brilliant. Yaya Touré tries to place it and does. Yaya Touré just have delivered the Premier League title as well.
When I started from my academy, I always loved goal. During my career, he was thinking about me not defending or running backwards, but I always keep in my mind always in the same way, like enjoying football, share that with fans, and be happy with something, you know what I mean? Because I've never been happy chasing people. I've always been happy when people chasing me. I was playing midfielder, and sometimes I have to do my duty as defending, try to protect the defense, the fullbacks. But it's only one ball. Two guys can do that. Me, I have to attack, and I've always been obsessed with goal.
You're a product of the ASIC Academy in the Ivory Coast. It's produced loads of amazing players.
What was special about that academy specifically?
Yeah, it's pure about football and passion than desire, you know. And at a young age, we learned tactics, but we were more technical. We learned as well about the different position as well, playing the games, because in our development as well and education, we know we're gonna face different coach during our career and we need to adapt. When I arrived in academy, for 2 years, I've been playing without shoes, learning degrees, learning touching balls, skills my feet, understanding all the area of my feet. My feet was getting hurt. If I take my shoes now and you see my feet is a bit ugly. When I learned how to control my feet without shoes on it and understand the ball clearly, purely, skin to the ball, is different.
The kind of famous story is about you going to Arsenal for the trial. Tell me about that.
The idea was Arsene Wenger was encouraging the CEO of Belgium clubs to keep me here in Belgium for one more years to complete the Belgium passport, and after that I can come back. Because at that time I was not European. I need to have a European passport. And for me, that last of time was too much for me. When I was in Ukraine, it was...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, we'll be discussing the stories making headlines in today's papers with our panellist, Matthew Stadling. That's after the break.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what? Historic day here today. Congratulations. This is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees. They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation. Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Well, it's time to see what's making headlines in today's papers in our news review. Really pleased to say I'm joined by presenter and political commentator Matthew Stadlen this morning. Great to have you company,
Good morning,
Matthew.
Great to see you.
Should we kick off then with the Daily Telegraph? Really interesting story. David Lammy breaking ranks on Brexit and saying, actually, one really easy way to boost the economy would be joining the customs union.
Yeah.
A red line from Keir Starmer, his boss.
Indeed, and as with is often the case with these articles, you jump to the end, and Lammy's spokespeople have said that there is going to be no rejoining of the customs union or indeed the single market. But reading between the lines, this story is indicative of a growing sense that the government is starting to wonder whether, given how unpopular they are and given how many voters they seem to be hemorrhaging on the left and to their Liberal side, might they actually consider signposting that one day we could rejoin in some form the European Union?
There will be critics that say if this move was something that was sanctioned, and we know and we've discussed, haven't we, that Keir Starmer says this will not happen. In fact, it's his red line. Critics will say this could be a betrayal of Brexit, essentially.
Of course, and this is an electorally toxic issue, as we know, but the government at the moment, if you believe the polls, is in a very difficult set of circumstances. Now, Darren Jones, who, as you know, is a key figure in Starmer's cabinet team, he said that Labour's policy would be announced in Parliament, not on podcasts, which is quite interesting because it comes across as a bit of a public slapdown for David Lammy, who is technically his senior as Deputy Prime Minister.
Yeah, really interesting story, that. I wondered if we could, and talking of podcasts, move on to the Times, broadcasting on a different level, and this is former Prime Minister Liz Truss is launching the Liz Truss Show. Yes. Online. And just to remind anyone watching, Liz Truss was in office for 49 days, wasn't she, Matthew? From the 6th of September to the 25th of October. That was in 2022. But what she's saying with this new show is that she wants to address some of the attacks and almost hinting or pushing on conspiracy lines, that she was taken down by the media, she was taken down by dark forces. And this, I thought you'd have quite a view on this story.
I mean, nothing surprises me anymore when it comes to Liz Truss, but the idea that this is going to be the home of counter-revolution kind of says it all, doesn't it? This is a former Prime Minister. Yes, she was Prime Minister for under 50 days, which in itself is remarkable. But the fact that a former Prime Minister is talking in these terms and setting up a YouTube channel is really quite astonishing. I interviewed Liz Truss, actually, on stage at, of all places, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival a year and a half ago. And I have to say, I had a lot of respect for her doing that. There were 300 people. They were not, at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, likely to be huge Liz Truss supporters, you might think. And she certainly got a bit of heckling. But I thought she handled herself bravely. And although I thought she was disastrous in office, the fact that she's still there putting out her side of the story, if nothing else, it's resilient.
Yeah, the show, well, the first episode, the Liz Truss show, will be shown today at 6:30 this evening.
She will love the publicity.
So,
and the
will you
show
be
must
watching?
go on for Liz Truss. I will not be watching.
Let's move on then to the front page of the Eye. We were talking about this at the top of our show, and it's child poverty and Labour's strategy and plan to tackle this, in part with removing the 2 child benefit cap.
So this is a fascinating battleground, not just now, mid-election cycle, but I think leading into the next election. I think the Tories will really try to paint Labour as the party of Benefit Street, which is a phrase that Kemi Badenoch has used in response to the budget. I think she's repeated it as well. I find it a very ugly and disparaging phrase. Labour, of course, had set out their stall as the party of working people. Now, we know they have raised taxes without perhaps explicitly breaking their manifesto pledges, but they've raised taxes on working people, and they are desperate to say both that they do want to drag children, hundreds of thousands of children, they say, out of poverty, and that that's good, actually, for the country as well as for the children, but also that they are still the party of working people, and the 2 child benefit cap scrap will help, in the majority, working parents.
Yeah, there will be people, I wonder, that will look at this, and we know the huge majorities of the electorate aren't in favour of removing the 2 child benefit cap. People want a government that steps in when we saw furlough happen and the energy crisis. But that has huge impacts, doesn't it, on the ballooning welfare cap?
Yeah, and Wes Streeting has initiated this review trying to understand why so many more people are on out-of-work benefits and are in trouble with their mental health. But on the child cap, I'll just spell it out. Children should not be blamed for the decisions that their parents make. And if the research is correct, that by scrapping the cap, you take hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty, even if it's relative poverty, that has got to be a good thing. And as I say, a good thing for the country as well.
Should we move on to the front page of the Express now, Matthew? Have you had the flu yet?
I haven't, and I would just say that I'm not a medical expert, I'm not a doctor. I had my flu jab as soon as it was available, and I'm trying to encourage my wife to do the same, because if one of us gets flu, as parents of young children and really busy with work, I mean, it just takes an enormous chunk of your time out of the way. And if you're older and frailer, and even if you're not old, it can be dangerous flu, and cases seem to be skyrocketing compared to where they were in 2023, I think.
Yeah, I think the big worry here, isn't it? It's multifaceted. On the one hand, this nasty flu that lots of people are talking about has started much earlier than it did last year. We have a pending resident doctors' strike that will be happening this month. So the mix of that, the cocktail of that, will have a huge strain on A&E doctors, on nurses over the Christmas period. So actually what you talk of is really quite important.
Yeah, indeed. And if people can get their jabs, I would suggest that that is good for them and it's good for society. My wife just needs to find the time to do it as a busy parent. But look, hospitals are going to be overwhelmed this Christmas, we worry, and there's going to be a junior doctor strike in the build-up to Christmas. So the more that we can do as individuals to take the strain off the system, I would suggest the better.
Yeah, I haven't been struck down yet. I'm just waiting for it.
Have you had your jab?
Thinking. I haven't had my jab yet. I haven't had it yet. Let's move on to the Telegraph is next, isn't it? This is, take us away, it's on page 2 and it's all about children and deportations.
Yeah, so as I understand it, and I hope I've got this right, a child of a failed asylum seeker already could be deported, but we know it hasn't been the priority of government to deport families where asylum claims have failed. This is a policy shift from the Labour government. And the reason I want to highlight this is because, look, whatever you think of the situation with asylum in this country, the really sharp edge of things has to be for children. And if you're born in this country, and if you've spent time growing up in this country and you can still be sent away from your country of birth, that feels to me, and I suspect to quite a few viewers as well, pretty tough.
Yeah, the Home Office saying they're going to ramp up the removals of families who've refugees their claims have been rejected, but also adding that the Home Office has returned 50,000 migrants since the election. That's the highest number, isn't it, in, what, a decade?
I mean, opposition will say that a lot of these have been voluntary.
Sure.
But even so, those are strong figures for the government when they are trying to signal that they are being tough in the face of this threat from the political threat from reform.
OK, I wanted to move on to a story. This is in The Times, and it's all about... Obviously, we talk a lot, don't we, about AI and how that could destroy many jobs. There's a report today saying that there's been a surge in the amount of people applying to become teachers in a bid that the teaching profession will be one of those professions that can't be taken away or damaged by the rise of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and robots, God forbid.
These sorts of conversations might not exist in 10 years' time. We will be made completely redundant.
But I find this so interesting because as a parent with children in early years setting, in primary setting, teachers, teaching assistants, they're so valuable for what they do. It's such a precious job, I think, personally. And now what we're seeing here is that where other industries are really lacking and losing actual humans, the teaching profession, we would think, was one of those gold standards that will never be replaced by technology.
As a parent of very young children, as I've already said, I am thinking hard about what the future might look like in the jobs market for those children when they grow up. And it looks like, but this is an assumption, that the teaching profession may be relatively bulletproof, although you would think that AI will have an ever-increasing presence in the classroom. You still need the human beings. By the way, we don't have enough teachers. And even despite this so-called boom, we still are under-resourced at secondary level. And there are warnings within this article that we need more people to become teachers.
What's really interesting in the conversations that I know parents have up and down the country there are jobs currently that don't actually exist, that our kids will one day have to apply for, and whether even the curriculum is serving that. I just find it quite fascinating.
We're learning about this every day.
Yeah. Shall we move on next to Joe Root, the Ashes? Take this away. This is definitely Matthew Stadling written all over it.
Zone. Okay, a lot of people, I think, will be following this story very closely, including this morning. Now, this is the life of an England cricket fan. Yesterday, despite some maddening batting, it was basically a glorious day to be English because Joe Root, possibly arguably our greatest cricketer of all time, managed to get his first century on Australian soil, and as wickets were tumbling around him, he remained not out. It was magnificent because the Australians have criticised him for not having ticked that box before. But as we came to air, the Ashes are hanging by a thread and our bowlers are struggling. And so I woke up this morning thoroughly deflated.
Yeah, quick update then. Australia 133 for 1. A couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to Monty Panesar on Sky News, and he was talking about there's this theatre between England and Australia, but it's the psychology that goes into it. So all of those Australian cricketers bashing Joe Root, whether that played into him performing this and getting this century will be so interesting, I think.
Monty is someone who's bowled to me in the nets. I'm mates with Monty. Good that he's been on your show or that you've been chatting to him. Mental resilience. I mean, we know sports people, men and women, all around the world for all different sports, know that it is not just about your talent, it is about your mindset. And Joe Root has that in spades.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. Very last one. We're running out of time.
There's a segue here.
Go on.
Because Joe Root is a very fine Yorkshireman.
Yes.
And look where the happiest place to live in the UK. OK, Joe Root was born in Sheffield, but Skipton in North Yorkshire is the happiest place. People looking out for each other. It is, of course, a gateway to the beautiful Yorkshire Dales. I found it fascinating that in this top 10, which I think has been compiled by Rightmove, 5 of the top 10 happiest places to live in the UK are in the north.
Yeah.
And a 6th is in Scotland. So those who live in the south and say it's grim up north,
oh, it
you're wrong.
definitely isn't. Altrincham in Greater Manchester comes in at 6th. I lived in Manchester
Great
for
city.
over a decade, and I can tell you the sense of community is huge there. I now live down south, and I live on a cul-de-sac where we're in this WhatsApp group where everyone shouts, oh, well, it's the black bin to go out tonight if you've forgotten. We need to get the milk for Rosemary, who's a pensioner that can't really get out and about at the moment. So there are, you know, the idea that we're a faceless community
in the
wrong.
pandemic, I got everyone on our street, or most people on our street, singing at 6 o'clock every day from our doorsteps or from our windows. I would just say Richmond in London, happy as well.
Love it. Matthew, thank you so much. Thanks for your company. Anna and Kamali up next.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 7 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
So Keir Starmer says he'll tackle what he's calling the moral issue of child poverty. His critics say, apart from scrapping the two-child benefit cap, the plans don't add up to much.
Eurovision is in a crisis as 4 countries say they will pull out of the competition after Israel is told it can compete next year.
As Australia prepares to ban people under 16 from using social media, Sky News speaks to a mother whose daughter took her own life after being bullied online.
But also coming up this morning, we are going to be speaking to Ray Mears. Well, the survival expert is adding his voice to calls all across Europe that we should be prepared in case war breaks out.
Hello and a very good morning. Thanks for joining us. The government is announcing its child poverty strategy today. It's pledged to stop children growing up in bed and breakfasts and to make childcare more accessible for families on universal credit. But charities and campaign groups are already saying that it doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, the criticism is already coming in. A record 4.5 million children are currently living in poverty, and tackling child poverty is seen as a totemic issue for this Labour government. Now, the Chancellor has scrapped the two-child benefit cap, a move that she hoped would stop some of the rebellion from within her own party after breaking a manifesto pledge not to raise tax. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell, for a bit more on this. Rob, morning to you. So, look, as we said there, they've scrapped the two-child benefit cap, which was demanded by Labour MPs for a long time. They said they can afford it. They managed to find the money for it in the budget. Does this now go further, this latest strategy?
A little bit. But when you look at what's doing the kind of heavy lifting here in terms of what's actually bringing families, children out of poverty, the lion's share of it is basically down to the two-child cap. So I think you can kind of see this as the scrapping of the two-child cap and then a sort of few little bits hung on the edge. In terms of what they actually are, of course, we knew, as you say, in the budget, the two-child benefit cap scrapped from April, meaning families with more than 2 children will no longer have financial support limited. Also, more funding and initiatives introduced to make childcare more accessible, the government says, helping parents on universal credit returning to work. £8 million being made available to end long-term placement of families in B&Bs, and also reforms at making baby formula more affordable as well. Now, the IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, have been through some of the figures here. They say this should bring child poverty back to where it was in 2010, basically pre-coalition, pre the austerity years. But they say out of basically the 550,000 in child poverty that this will bring it down by, 450,000 of that is the two-child cap alone. So you can see what's doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and it begs the question why the government took a year to bring it into place, I guess. That's what the critics will argue and ask.
Yeah, I mean, we've known for a while that basically the single most effective way to reduce child poverty is getting rid of this cap. It doesn't detract from the political arguments about that. You know, the Tories will say, I think they've accused this of being a budget for benefit street, that this is basically loading more money, more spending onto the taxpayer, and that there are better ways to do this. Those that work with families in poverty actually universally have welcomed the scrapping of the two-child cap. Yeah. But as you suggested, they think that this could go further. This brings it down to about 4 million children still in poverty. What about them, is what some campaigners are saying. Others want this more long-term, set over 10 years with legally binding targets in it as well. We've heard Lord Bird, the founder of The Big Issue, talking about why the government doesn't go back to essentially restarting the Sure Start centres that help preschool children in the New Labour.
That was the big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, years. The government have got a sort of version of that, but a slimmed-down version of it. So, yes, everyone welcoming the central plank of this, but also people asking whether it could go further.
Yeah, Joseph Rowntree, one of those that are backing it. And it's interesting they go back to 2010, because, of course, Labour were in power for a little while up to that point while trying to tackle child poverty during the Blair-Brown years. Now, another story that's making political weather this morning, Rob, is Nigel Farage continuing to have to defend against these accusations that he made racist, anti-Semitic comments while at school at Dulwich College in the 70s. What has he had to say in his latest defence of himself?
Yeah, this was in a press conference yesterday where Farage kind of tried to turn the fire, I guess, on the BBC and on ITV, who were not initially reporting this story. The initial reports came from The Guardian, but have been following it up. I think we can have a little listen to actually what he said in that press conference. Pretty angry exchange.
Back in the 1970s, the culture was very different. Perhaps, Damon, you should reflect on that. Especially at Dulwich. Lots of boys said things they'd regret today, or just laugh at. Whilst Nigel stood out, he was neither aggressive nor a racist. If I can help in any way, let me know. And I've had plenty of those messages over the course of the last few days, and I am sick to death of the double standards and hypocrisy, above all, of your organisation. And what happened on the Today programme this morning was a complete bloody disgrace.
OK.
Yeah, and it really fired up there. He came out fighting, didn't he? And this was a news conference that he called to talk about the delay of mayoral elections, but this was the issue that seemed to really get him engaged.
I mean, it's a sort of classic Nigel Farage technique, this. He's sort of trying to muddy the water. That's to say nothing of, you know, how important the claims in themselves are. But what he's basically saying is, you go back to the 70s when he was at school, when he's alleged to have said this sort of stuff, and he's pointing at BBC programmes like the Black and White Minstrel Show and It Ain't Half Hot Mum, which, you know, clearly at the time had characters in them and storylines in them that were not OK. But what he's trying to do is draw a parallel between that and the discussion that I guess we have widely as a society now about some of the coverage and some of the programmes that we had in the past that were clearly not all right because they played into racist and sexist tropes and stereotypes, but trying to equate that with accusations that at the time he went up to Jewish people at school and said Hitler was right, gas them all.
Yeah.
I mean, they are very clearly not the same things, right? I mean, and the difficulty for Farage is I'm not sure what his defence is. Is it that he didn't say this, or is it that he did say it, but he didn't mean it to be racial abuse and he didn't mean it in a nasty way?
Well, he claims it's without malice, but, I mean, if those shows were offensive at that time and would be offensive now, doesn't the same stand up if that's his defence of his language? It was offensive then, and it would be offensive now. I mean, he's saying that he may have said it in banter without malice, but if he said it and those individuals, which are now 28 individuals, I think the number's increasing who have accused him of this sort of thing, I'm not quite sure that the comparison stacks up.
But also, I'm a bit confused about how you can equate, not that there's, you know, necessarily a complete defence for those types of programmes back then, but that's a sort of complicated, nuanced topic, right, that I think society and broadcasting, the media has been getting to grips with, about how you judge now, I guess, programmes that were of their age but still offensive. But the thing I can't add up is the things that he is alleged to have said, how can that be banter? How can that be playground banter and joshing? And I think that's the difficulty here. So, look, it's something that's following Nigel Farage around. This is a sort of, I think, a way that he is trying to muddy the water on this and trying to turn the fire back on the BBC. The fact that he's reaching for something like this maybe shows that he feels like he's a little bit under pressure on the topic.
OK, well, we may well hear more about it. Rob, thanks very much indeed.
I think we definitely will. All right.
Now, let's turn to a crisis at Eurovision now. The BBC says it supports allowing Israel to participate in next year's Eurovision Song Contest, despite 4 countries launching a boycott in protest.
Yeah, Ireland, the Netherlands, Spain and Slovenia said they will not compete after the majority of broadcasters, part of the European Broadcasting Union, voted against a move which would have blocked Israel from being a part of it.
Well, in a statement, the BBC said, we support the collective decision made by members of the EBU. This is about enforcing the rules of the EBU and being inclusive. However, the Irish broadcaster RTE said it feels that Ireland's participation remains unconscionable given the appalling loss of lives in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis there, which continues to put the lives of so many citizens at risk.
Yeah, they go on. RTE remains deeply concerned by the targeted killings of journalists in Gaza during the conflict and the continued denial of access to international journalists to the territory.
Well, RTV Slovenia echoed that sentiment when explaining why they were also pulling out of the competition.
I think the most fair thing would be for Israel to withdraw and, really leave the Festival of Songs be the Eurovision Song Contest and not the political place.
Well, that's Slovenia's reasoning for doing this, Anna, isn't it? And as the point was made there by the head of their public service broadcaster, Eurovision is not meant to be a political place, but, I mean, it always is political. It always feels political, doesn't it? And let's remember that Russia were banned within days of invading Ukraine, and many people feel there is a double standard being put in place here, that Israel is not being stopped from competing because of what happened during the war in Gaza.
Well, yeah, and as you say, the organisers will say this is supposed to be an event that's about joy, about bringing people together, about music, but as you say, politics appears to be taking over, certainly on this occasion, and with 4 countries pulling out, there are still a few more days before other countries can make a decision, so it'd be interesting to see if more do.
Yeah.
And then you get the question of how individual artists feel.
Well, that's the point you were making, which I think is really interesting, because I think a couple of years ago, didn't we have the concerns that there were going to be on-stage protests in support of Palestine, which the EB were really, really concerned about, which led to there being some criticism and some controversy around one of the shows. I think it was a show in Switzerland, actually, a couple of years ago. So there is a concern that there may well be action by artists specifically, but Spain is a significant country to have pulled out. They're known as one of the big nations because they donate so much to the EBU, but of course at this stage Britain is still very much a part of it, and I guess will continue to be so.
Indeed. Now, in less than a week, Australia is going to restrict access to all social media platforms for any child under the age of 16. The World First policy, which comes into effect on December the 10th, carries a fine of up to £25 million if the platforms don't take what's described as reasonable steps to stop children accessing their sites.
Well, Nicole Johnson is in Australia and has been speaking to a mother whose daughter took their own life after being bullied online. And a warning, Nicole's report does contain some distressing content.
Surf, sea and skating. What a way to grow up. Vesper Eating and Indy Conwell love to share their skateboarding on social media. They also coach beginners and have corporate sponsors. Their profiles are managed by their mums. But under Australia's strict new law, in a week's time, their accounts will be closed.
What do you think of the ban then? I think it's great in a way that it will keep out a lot of the kids from getting cyberbullied and getting addicted. But also for people like me, I need it for my sponsors and also coaching.
The government says it's banning access to social media for children under 16 years of age to protect them from toxic content and online abuse.
Australia's laws shift the responsibility from parents onto social media companies. So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all of these will be banned. And what worries the social media companies is that other countries are watching what's happening here, and some of them are looking to adopt it.
32% wanted to give it up, but if they felt their friends were going to give it up as well, it went up to 61%.
Some schools are trying to prepare students for life that's not online, even though kids will still be able to use messaging apps. These girls are learning about social media addiction and how to make friends in real life.
I have a little sibling who is now affected by the ban. She got a phone last year and she hasn't got any of the major social media platforms, which is Snapchat and Instagram. And she was a very active kid, but you can see the change. She's more scrolling when she gets home, less talking, less going out. She's more addicted to the phones.
And that addiction can contribute to severe mental health problems. Emma Mason has seen it all unravel. Her daughter, Tilly Rosewarne, took her own life after being relentlessly bullied online.
Tilly, when she was about 14, had a fake nude that was sent around by a friend of hers at school in Bathurst, and that was a fake porn image. The head had been cut off, and he got Snapchat, took a photo of it and then sent it on a bus to 5 children, and then ultimately spread to about 300 children in Bathurst, and then it went to about 1,000 kids. And by 6 p.m, she had attempted suicide. For me, that was the moment where it was really difficult for her to find hope.
Emma Mason has been campaigning for a social media ban since Tilly died on the 16th of February 2022. She was 15 years old. That ban comes into force next Wednesday. Nicole Johnston, Sky News, Sydney.
Now, if you have been impacted by Nicole's reporting there, remember, you can contact Samaritans 24 hours a day. You can call them on 116 123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. And Anna, we talked about this story just last week, wasn't it, when we had two opposing views on this. I mean, the heart of Nicole's reporting is that family that's now lost its daughter because of the abuse that she faced online, and that is something that parents in this country can certainly relate to, not least the Russell family, who lost Molly for the abuse that she faced online as well.
Yeah, I mean, the decision is being challenged, isn't it, by two teenagers in the courts there, and they would argue that they need social media to be able to communicate with their friends, and there are some people in rural communities, for example, or perhaps see themselves as being different from their peers at school, feel they can find their own tribe elsewhere, and they argue that it's important for their mental health. But it is a huge debate that's going on about whether or not children need to be protected from social media.
Yeah, and as Nicole says, it's one that countries around the world, not least this one, are looking at to see how well it lands in Australia. It's a story we're going to keep a close eye on here on Mornings. Now, let's tell you about Vladimir Putin. Well, the president is in India. He's holding talks with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi as the two nations look to strengthen their ties.
Yeah, well, the visit is set to put New Delhi's delicate diplomatic balancing act under the spotlight as it tries to maintain close ties with Moscow while managing its relationship with Washington amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. And officials are preparing for a series of agreements to be signed, a move that comes just months after the United States stepped up pressure on India to curb its purchases of Russian oil. Well, let's get more on this. We can talk now to our India reporter, Neville Lazarus. So, Neville, talk us through a little bit more the significance of this meeting and to what extent India is trying to balance out its economic needs, but also its awareness of its relationship with the US as well.
Yes, it is. It is a very balancing act which Prime Minister Modi has to walk at the moment. There has been immense pressure on India, as mentioned, about the discounted oil which India has been importing. It rose from 2% in 2021, and now it's about 40%. A huge amount of oil being taken imported by India, and this has not gone down with Washington very well. In August this year, President Trump levied a punishment tariff of 25% on India for importing this discounted oil, taking the total tariff to about 50%, one of the highest in the world. And they justified it, saying that it's of national security concerns and that the profits made by Russia was fueling Moscow's war machine. India obviously rejected that, saying that it did it because of its own security, energy security for its 1.4 billion people. But nevertheless, it has come under severe pressure, and it has started to draw down on imports of Russian oil. It is now ramping up its buying and purchasing of oil and gas from America. It is also in the sort of last phases of a free trade agreement with America. But President Putin is here to try and insulate that defense and trade deals with one of its long-standing allies, which goes back to last century in the Cold War. And there will be a lot of scrutiny on the optics, the perceptions, and the substantive talks of these between the two leaders. And it will be closely watched in Washington and European capitals.
Neville, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. So the government has announced its long-awaited child poverty strategy today. As we told you earlier, it promises to lift 500,000 children out of poverty by the end of this Parliament. Some charities have welcomed it as a start, they say, but its critics are branding it as unambitious.
Yes,
so let's hear a little bit more. I'm joined now by Minister for Local Government and Homelessness, Alison McGovern. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. So tell us more. You want to lift 500,000 children out of poverty by the end of this Parliament. How are you going to do it?
So our child poverty strategy is about improving incomes, reducing costs and giving parents the support that they need. So on incomes, people will be aware that we're lifting the two-child limit, which is a very significant measure to get children out of poverty. We're also raising the national minimum wage, which is worth £900 a year to some of the lowest paid workers. On costs, we've taken a number of steps to freeze rail fares and to make sure that people's have a bit of help with their energy bills, up to £300 for those on universal credit. Particularly on costs, as the Minister for Homelessness, the bit that I'm really working on is to get those children who are experiencing the worst poverty, that's our children who are currently housed in B&B temporary accommodation, out of those that B&B accommodation and into more settled housing. And I'm sorry to say that we've got the hidden scandal of 2,000 children housed in B&B accommodation for more than 6 weeks, which is actually unlawful. And so we need to take steps over the weeks and months to come to address that. And that's a part of our strategy as well. But overall, for all families, we want to see them with rising incomes, taking action on their costs, and also learning the lessons of Sure Start and bringing back that good quality family help in every area.
You mentioned Sure Start. Why not bring it back?
Well, our Best Start family hubs, as I say, learn the lessons of Short Start, which is, and those lessons are,
version, isn't it?
if you invest in good family help, it saves you money down the line. So actually, what's happening at the moment is we're paying the cost of child poverty in A&E attendances and in children not being ready to learn. Since Sure Start was got rid of by the Tories, some councils have innovated, brought different services together to help parents. And so we want to work with what's already happening in communities up and down the country. But we have increased the number of Best Start family hubs for 1,000 across the country, which means there'll be one in every area.
You called the lifting of the two-child benefit cap a significant measure, and really it's doing the heavy lifting in this strategy, isn't it? I mean, the IFS, the independent think tank, estimates that 450,000 of the 550,000 that these measures should help is down to that one policy. Essentially, are you lifting children out of poverty by expanding the welfare state?
Well, we have to recognise how poverty has changed over the past decade and a half. And the reason why I say that is because it used to be the case that if you were in poverty, you were likely to be a parent out of work.
Ah, the line has frozen, Alison. I don't know if you can still hear me, but your picture has frozen for the moment. I'm going to keep talking in the hope that it reanimates.
Unfortunate that you're just in the middle of giving you.
It's still frozen. I've been told by our director. I
mean, the challenge.
Let's see if we can reconnect because we do want to continue that conversation. It's a really important issue.
It was, and the challenge was that you were just putting to the minister there was that this attempt to lift children out of poverty has resulted in a huge increase in spending on welfare, which is what the government's critics are really getting on them for.
Yeah, Alison, I think we've got you back now. Apologies, but your picture just froze there as you were starting to answer my question. No, it's not your fault at all. But basically, I was putting to you that the two-child benefit cap is basically doing all the work here.
It used to be the case that people were poor because they were out of work. That's not true anymore. 3/4 of families in poverty, that someone is working in that household. What's driving poverty at the moment is where you have larger families because of the two-child limit. So, we think that the cost of that is significant to taxpayers because children are not able to learn, and we're seeing the cost of that in the NHS. So we know we've got to lift the two-child cap because all of our children deserve to succeed, and that's the way that we will help them move on in life. And I think it's right that we say we don't blame the children for decisions taken by their parents. We make sure that everybody has a chance and an opportunity to succeed.
As you know, the lifting of that cap has its critics, but you believe that it makes a massive difference to tackling this issue of child poverty. So if you're so convinced, why did you take so long to bring it in? Why wasn't it brought in last year?
Because we spent a year working across government to work out what the effective decisions are that we can take that will get ahead of poverty. So can we use our investment in the NHS to make sure that we're improving children's health, which is what we're going to do? Can we make sure that our investment in schools is also helping those children who are most at risk because of poverty, of not being ready to learn? So we thought through all of the measures and making sure that government is working together, not just focused on one thing. And that's the right way, I think, to prevent poverty as well as just mop up the costs of it. So we listen to families up and down the country. I've spent many hours in community centres and in schools and talking to families and parents and children and listening to how they feel about it. They want decent housing, to be able to work and have a good income, and then to be able to have a quality of family life and spend time together. And that's what we've put at the heart of our strategy.
I just want, while we've got you, I've got a couple of other questions I do want to put to you, because Sky News is airing a documentary today looking at grooming gangs. It tells a really shocking story of lives ruined, and it's an ongoing problem, as we see in this documentary. The government announced in June a national inquiry. When is that expected to start?
So the ministers responsible are working with victims to get the right chair. We want that national inquiry to get to the truth and to, get all of the details of what is undoubtedly one of the greatest scandals in our country's history. So ministers are working with victims now to get the right chair. And meanwhile, the Prime Minister has asked every police force in the country to go through their historic cases and to review them, because we can't waste any time in the activity that we can take whilst ministers responsible go through the process of working carefully with victims to find the right chair. And once we've got the chair, then the inquiry will start.
And finally, a quick question about Eurovision, because yesterday we saw 4 countries pulling out of next year's contest after it was decided that Israel could compete. The BBC has said that Britain will enter. Is that the decision that you wanted to see?
Well, primarily this is one for the European Broadcasting Union. They're an independent organisation who run Eurovision. Personally speaking, I'm not myself. Some people are really obsessive Eurovision fans. I'm not. But when it came to Liverpool, it was a wonderful time for my city. Everybody had a fabulous time. So I do think it's sad if it can't, if there are issues with Eurovision. But the decisions are independent of government. So it's one for the EBU.
Indeed. Well, good to get your take on it, though. Alison McGovern, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. And apologies for the technical problems.
No, my apologies too.
You're both saying sorry to each other. That's nice.
Yeah,
Neither of your fault, but it's worth the apology. Look, I thought her answer around the child poverty questions was interesting, because, as you pointed out, and as Rob was pointing out to us earlier, the bulk of this is being made up by a decision that was made last week, a decision that they said they couldn't afford, that now they've managed to find the money for. I was also taken with what she said about the grooming gangs. Now, we've got a documentary that's going to be airing on Sky later on today. We're going to be speaking to the producer of that documentary later on as well about the current situation with the grooming gangs inquiry, but specifically our documentary speaks to survivors of...
It's very powerful.
It's really powerful. It's really important as well, as you point out, because that inquiry hasn't been able to get going because they haven't got a chair. And the Minister, for all, I guess, her best intentions, was unable to really give you an answer as to when that would be sorted, because they still haven't got a chair. The 2 people that they had mooted for it weren't able to take the decision because of the resistance of people who've been on the inquiry, who've then withdrawn from the inquiry. We're going to speak to one of those later on this morning. So it finds itself still in this terrible position where it can't actually get started, and these victims and their families need and want answers.
Absolutely. Lots more on that in the next hour. Coming up, though, this hour, something totally different. We're going to be talking to the Managing Director of Gumtree. It's their big anniversary.
It certainly is. Stay with us.
I'd wake up with really bad bruises and I don't have a clue where they come from. That's how I knew I'd been raped. I'm not the only one it's happened to, and it's still happening.
Couldn't even move, and I just remembered, sorry, I'm gonna cry.
You just have to have sex with these people just so you can be safe and not be killed.
Just thought, like, I will end up dead.
Hello there, you're watching Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. Let's take you through our headlines. And campaigners have welcomed the announcement of a long-awaited government strategy that aims to tackle child poverty. It includes greater access to childcare and, of course, the scrapping of that two-child benefit cap, which we heard about in last week's budget.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is in India, where he's expected to sign a number of new agreements on trade. The visit coincides with continued US efforts to broker a peace deal for Ukraine, which have stalled over territorial disputes.
And the BBC says it supports Israel competing at the Eurovision Song Contest, despite a number of other countries boycotting. Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands and Slovenia say they won't compete next year after Israel was included following the war in Gaza.
Now, Iran is facing the very real possibility of having to move its capital city away from Tehran, with water supplies running dangerously low. The country is in its 6th consecutive year of extreme drought, and the metropolis of Tehran is edging closer to its day zero when water completely dries out.
It's incredible. This, our science correspondent Thomas Moore has been looking into how Iran is trying to avoid disaster and why water-stressed cities like this one, London, could soon be impacted.
Iran's capital is counting down to day zero, the day the water runs out and the taps run dry. Reservoirs that supply Tehran's 15 million residents are almost empty, This is the Karaj Dam, which supplies a quarter of the city's drinking water, now just 8% full. The president has warned that people may even have to evacuate, and water rationing has begun in some areas.
We may need to reduce the water pressure to zero during some nights while residents are asleep. This measure would help prevent water waste. However, it could inconvenience the public, so we ask citizens to ensure they install water storage tanks.
So what's going on? Well, rain should start falling in the autumn after Iran's hot, dry summer. But according to the National Weather Forecasting Centre, this has been the driest September to November period in half a century, with rainfall 89% below the long-term average. The combination of low rainfall and high heat over several years has left a huge area, shown here in red, that's in severe water deficit. It's almost 2,000 miles across. This was the Latian Reservoir near Tehran in June. By the beginning of November, it was just 9% full, with levels still falling. Climate change is part of the story, but that alone doesn't account for the crisis in Tehran. The population of the city has almost doubled from 4.9 million in 1979 to 9.7 million today. But water consumption has risen even faster, quadrupling from 346 million cubic metres in 1976 to 1.2 billion cubic metres now, as increasing wealth has bought washing machines and dishwashers. To supplement supplies from reservoirs, Tehran has had to turn to natural aquifers underground, which provide between 30% and 60% of its tap water. But that puts the city in direct competition with farmers who draw on water to irrigate crops. Levels are falling by 101 million cubic metres a year around Tehran, water that has accumulated from many decades of rain. The former deputy head of Iran's Environment Department says chronic mismanagement of natural resources has led to what he calls water bankruptcy.
These things were not created overnight. They're the product of decades of bad management, lack of foresight, over-reliance, and false confidence when it came to how much the infrastructure and engineering projects can do in a country that is relatively water short.
Government ministers blamed the water shortage on climate change, water leaks and the 12-day war with Israel. Tehran is one of several global cities vulnerable to water scarcity. Cape Town in South Africa narrowly avoided taps running dry 8 years ago after a citywide effort to save water. Even London, known for its rain, is at risk. Supplies haven't kept up with population growth and booming demand, as Tehran has found droughts that are being made more likely and more severe by climate change can expose the fragility of water supply. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Now, later today, we're going to find out who England and Scotland's first opponents are going to be in the World Cup, because the draw is happening today.
It is.
Excited?
Absolutely. A little nervous, but it'll be great. They've got to beat all the best teams to win the World Cup. Come on,
so true. Well, not all of them.
Well, some of them.
Yeah.
Not all of them. Yeah, that would be ridiculous. We have to beat every single team all the time. Well, look, they're going to be doing that big reveal later on in DC. It's an expanded tournament, of course, this year. 48 teams, and it's the first ever to be held across 3 continents. 3 countries. Not continents, just one continent.
Yeah, that one continent. Yeah, Mexico, Canada and the US are already locked into groups A, B and D. We know that. The ceremony will also reveal the winner of the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize.
Hadn't heard of that. No, I hadn't heard of that before. They're just making something up, are they?
The thought is it might go to President Trump.
Oh, really? Is he in for it? Would he want it? Probably.
Let's find out more, shall we? Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has more.
This is for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well.
Of all the world leaders who've been inside here at the White House since Donald Trump returned for a second term in power, no one has been here more often than Gianni Infantino.
Probably the most respected man in sports.
But he doesn't head a country. He leads FIFA, World Football's governing body. And there's been so much intrigue about how this close alliance is built between Infantino and Trump. At the heart of it is the World Cup next year, with Infantino wanting those close government ties to ensure the tournament passes off successfully, and President Trump seeing what an opportunity it is having the world's biggest sporting event.
He knows what Trump wants to hear, just recently publicly backing his political agenda for change.
He says what he thinks. He says actually what many people think as well, but maybe don't dare to say, and that's why he's so successful. We should all support what he's doing, because I think he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
When you go all in, it can be hard to distance yourself. So there's been no hint of criticism when Trump has been threatening to take World Cup matches away from Democrat-run cities he believes are not safe.
If we think there's going to be a problem, we'll... Johnny, can I say we will move? I don't think you're going to have this problem, but we're going to move the event to some place where it's going to be appreciated and safe.
Yeah, well, I think safety and security is the #1 priority.
I asked a Seattle World Cup official about Trump disparaging them.
Is your city a
Absolutely not. Our city is amazing.
Does it not annoy you?
Our city is extremely safe, and we know folks will see that when they come out to visit next summer.
They'll discover which teams will visit after Friday's World Cup draw, which is being attended by Trump. An event designed to please the president, indulging his passions. To win a peace prize, one's being handed out by FIFA after his frustrations about being denied the Nobel version. And even the 70s disco group The Village People will be there to perform his campaign song YMCA. Expect the Trump dance, expect the unexpected. But one of soccer's most prominent Trump backers told me there's nothing wrong with the World Cup being politicised like this.
Is it be a bit of a Trump show? No, I mean, sports are inherently, I think, political. And so, obviously with our president so heavily invested and involved, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive thing. And I'm certain that, he loves a good show.
A show that should also be about Canada and Mexico as well. This supersized World Cup being staged across 3 countries, but it all seems very much about Donald Trump. Rob Harris, Sky News, Washington.
Now, 25 years ago, this item might make you feel old or young, I'm not quite sure, depending on how much you remember it. An online marketplace called Gumtree transformed the way many people buy things online. Now, the site is still going strong with 10 million monthly users and 400 million interactions per year. You used Gumtree, Anna?
It's a bit embarrassing because I've got the managing director sitting next to me, but I'm not sure if I have, or if I have, it was a long time ago. Let's introduce you. That was a very rude way of introducing you, Kim Farrer, to admit that I'm not sure if I have used Gumtree, but we were comparing notes, and you actually...
I did. I got a flat using Gumtree quite a long time ago in South London. It was listed on there, and I lived there happily for a good few years. So thanks, Gumtree.
Yes.
And the guys I lived with.
So, happy anniversary, 25 years. I mean, we were trying to think about when people first engaged with the internet, and you were kind of quite early, an early website, weren't you, online for people to use? Did you feel like an early adopter at the time?
Well, definitely. When it comes to the web, the big businesses that emerged around the 90s, Gumtree was one of them, right? So Gumtree launched in the year 2000. And it was very different to what it is today. It was a classified type notice board, which was very London-based for migrants that were coming from New Zealand, South Africa, Australia. Actually, Gumtree is a tree that grows in all 3 countries, which is the origin story.
That's etymology of work. Excellent. So look, and how has it changed over that time then, from being just a classified site to what it is now?
Well, it's obviously it is one of the best-known online marketplaces, not only the UK right now. So it's expanding in other countries. So you'll see a Gumtree in Australia, you'll see a Gumtree in South Africa today. But in the UK, it's grown to become the leading online marketplace, right? With those 10 million users we've got every month across many different verticals. So not only we've got items for sale, we've got properties, the flat you found, we've got services as well. We've got pets even you can buy on Gumtree.
And always traditionally, you did the deal on the website, didn't you? But you then went and carried out the transaction in person. You go and pick up your table or move into your flat and you pass over the money person to person. But that is changing, isn't it?
It's starting to change, yeah. Still the core is a very simple model, right? It's free to list and then you would have that conversation between buyer and seller and you would transact predominantly offline, but we're moving to becoming more transactional. So delivery on Gumtree just launched a month ago, which allows you to buy items on Gumtree with just a few taps.
And is that because of concerns about safety and fraud? Because obviously people are being scammed when they're trying to buy things online quite often. If there aren't sort of safety checks in place in the initial, there can be a danger to buyers.
Well, not entirely. So we spend a lot of time developing trust and safety mechanisms within Gumtree, developed a team and a lot of technology. And those that are exposed to those type of malicious activity is only 0.04% of our users. So still today, Gumtree is one of the safest marketplaces.
It's still that low?
It is that low, and it is dropping, yes.
Yeah, because online scams, and we were just talking about it last week, weren't we, and the increase around Black Friday and how people are really concerned that there are more and more of these sort of sites that are mirroring other sites to try and look like it, just to try and get money out of people.
So AI is part of the problem, but also part of the solution. So we're spending a lot of time ensuring that we are detecting all the malicious activity that can happen when you're posting an ad or when you are actually chatting or interacting. But yes, moving towards a delivery on Gumtree will safeguard the experience even further.
Well, yeah, and to what extent have you made that move as well because of so much competition? I mean, you've got Vinted and eBay, for example, huge sites now. I mean, that's stiff competition, isn't it?
Well, there's a lot of competition for sure, but every marketplace serves a different need. Gumtree, we focus very much around the home, and we're aiming at removing friction continuously for buyers and sellers. Moving towards delivery on Gumtree really does help broaden the horizons of the platform, because not only you are successful as a seller by seeing buyers from your own neighborhood being interested on those items, but now you can attract the entire nation.
Kim, really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah,
congratulations to the company for its 25th anniversary. And thank you very much for being with us. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Now, lots coming up for you, including we're going to be talking to the survivalist Ray Mears, who's going to give us his take on whether the UK is prepared for war. That's coming up.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what? Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did. He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation. Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Now, the former head of the British Army said that the country should start to be prepared for war by the end of the decade. But as with many people, we are just not ready.
Well, one survivalist says that many nations are sleepwalking under a false sense of security, and the golden rule is to simply prepare for the worst. Well, let's speak to him. Ray Mears joins us now. Very good morning to you, Ray Mears. We so appreciate you talking to us this morning.
Morning, Ray.
And this is an issue that you've written about, haven't you? Britain's preparedness for war. First of all, do you think that the UK is at risk of war?
Well, I mean, everyone's telling us that there is a risk of war. I think the world has changed. We've got megalomaniac, autocratic leaders who are joining together to try to bring down democracy, everything we stand for, that's for sure. And I think also some of them, Putin's in not a very good place at the moment. And we know from history when people become desperate, they do crazy things. So I think we'd be foolish to think that the peace that we've enjoyed for the last 30 years or more is continuing. I think we need to be prepared, and being prepared makes us less vulnerable and changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, being prepared is the thing, isn't it, Ray? Morning to you. Look, I guess British viewers might be listening to this and thinking, you know, we're scaremongering, we're raising worries that perhaps shouldn't be there. But I guess Britain is quite unique in this fact that many countries across Europe are already sort of thinking about this. Sweden recently updated its crisis handbook for all households. Finland did the same. Germany's done the same. France, Norway, Denmark. A bunch of European nations are telling their citizens that they need to be prepared in case of crisis, and that crisis being war. And perhaps it's time that Brits start thinking the same way.
We should definitely be thinking the same way. I think that everyone is looking enviously at Finland and their preparations. And of course, they live closer to a threat than the rest of us. But for decades, since the end of the Second World War, they have prepared to defend their nation. In fact, one of their politicians said this year that Finland doesn't have a defence force. Finland is a defence force. And their preparations for emergencies and crises have withstood changes in government. It's become a part of their national identity. It's a cohesive, unifying force in Finland, where every Finnish citizen has a duty to the defence of their nation.
Well, yeah, and there is compulsory military service there in Finland, isn't there? Is that something that you think that the UK should look at?
We should have done it years ago. We are behind the curve. We have a brilliant armed forces. Our service personnel are amazing, arguably the most professional in the world, but there aren't enough of them. And if you need in a crisis to conscript people, you need to build an army very quickly. The problem that you have is how long you can train them for. And we know from prior experience that the longer you train someone, the greater their chances of coming home. So really, this is something we should have been doing decades ago. We are behind the curve, and we should get on with it. And we should make it enjoyable for young people. This is about investing in our nation, investing in the youth of our nation, encouraging them to be self-reliant, to have adventurous spirit, to find more of themselves. And I don't think we do that well enough as a society to start with.
It's interesting, isn't it, Ray? Because the rhetoric is changing. We had the previous government under Rishi Sunak talking about this idea of national service. I know that the Prime Minister and John Healey have also kind of teased about this idea of us all doing more in the event of war. You've given us the argument and the sort of the philosophy around all of this and why we should be doing more. Why don't you give us some of the practicalities of it, Ray? I used to live in Turkey, and there many of us who lived in the city of Istanbul had a bag prepared in the event of earthquake that could keep us sort of safe and warm and with a bit of cash for a few days. What sort of things do people need to start thinking about?
Well, we've been told we should have 3 days' worth of food and water prepared, and a radio and things like that. And it's good advice. But bear in mind that as a nation, we only have about 3 days' supply of food for the nation, and fuel is just inadequate. What we need is not just individuals preparing a grab bag at home. We need actual concerted efforts at a national level so that we have organizations in place. We know where there are people with angle grinders if you need them, where chainsaws are. Everybody needs to be a part of this. We need to work together. That's the only way that this sort of thing works. So it's tremendously important that we encourage our politicians to actually bite the bullet and say, yeah, we need to be better prepared as a nation. Let's do it. Let's find a means of coming together in our increasingly polarized society to do this.
Very really quickly, but I mean, talking like this, it's not a conversation I ever thought we'd be having. Right, we feel like we're at a really scary time. What will you say to those that say to you, you're trying to scare us, you are fear-mongering at this point?
Not at all. I mean, I think we've seen in the past that we've been late in our preparations on prior occasions when there's been a threat to the nation. And our cemeteries are filled with servicemen who died because we weren't properly supplied. And we mustn't let that happen again. For once, let's be ahead of the curve and make ourselves a target that no one will attack.
Well, Roma, it's really fascinating to talk to you this morning. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really interesting debate.
Really is, and really appreciate you joining us, Ray. And I think everyone can take a little bit of that advice from him, especially governments, in terms of getting us ready. All right, we're going to move on to something completely different for the end of the hour, because been out on the road doing that reporting in front of a camera, and you never quite know what's going to happen. Normally, it's the general public you have to watch out for, but here, have a look at this. Ready?
I'm braced because I know what's coming.
Watch out. And there we go. Pigeon to the face.
Yes.
Yikes.
Poor woman, poor pigeon. I don't know who I feel more sorry for. I hope she's all
Although
right.
it says seagull there, so I may have been misidentifying my birds. Oh my goodness.
This is a reporter in New Zealand. As you can see, it left her bloodied. So, I really feel for her.
But the seagull flew away.
I think hopefully the seagull was fine too. Anyway, stay in the warm studio, I reckon.
Yeah, stay with us.
Please stay with us.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
So Keir Starmer says he'll tackle what he's calling the moral issue of child poverty. His critics say, apart from scrapping the two-child benefit cap, the plans don't add up to much.
Eurovision is in crisis as 4 countries pull out after Israel's told it can compete next year.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is in India as talks to end his country's invasion of Ukraine stall.
Well, also ahead this morning, we're looking at schools in the UK. We'll tell you which is the top establishment. Plus,
the Yorkshire town named the happiest place to live in Britain.
hello, good morning, and thanks for being with us. The government is announcing its child poverty strategy today. It's pledged to stop children growing up in bed and breakfasts and to make childcare more accessible for families who are on universal credit. But charities and some campaign groups are already saying that it just doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, a record 4.5 million children are currently living in poverty in the UK, and tackling child poverty is a totemic issue for the Labour government. The Chancellor scrapped the two-child benefit cap in her recent budget, a move which helped quell rebellion from her own party about breaking her manifesto pledge not to raise tax. Well, let's find out a little bit more about this strategy. Rob is here. Morning to you, Rob. So we've been waiting for this for a while. What does it say? How far does it go?
Yeah, I mean, the main bit of it is the thing that we already knew, basically, the removal of the two-child cap. There is other stuff, though. Let me take you through some of the key measures first. Obviously, as we found out in the budget, the two-child benefit cap will be scrapped from April. So basically, that means that families with more than 2 children won't have their financial support limited. There'll also, though, be more funding and initiatives to make childcare more accessible, so helping parents on universal credit who are in the process of going back to work, returning to work. £8 million will be there to end long-term placement of families in B&Bs, and it also includes reforms aimed at making baby formula more affordable as well. So some valuable stuff in there, but the IFS, the think tank, has sort of crunched the numbers on this and found that a lot of this, sort of 80% of the reduction that this will bring about in child poverty is down to that top measure, the two-child cap. So that's doing the heavy lifting. And I think what critics say is, what about the 4 million kids that are still in poverty even after this reduction takes place? What about longer-term strategy? There's no legal targets or set targets in this for where they want to bring it down to. Lord Bird, the founder of The Big Issue as well, has talked about trying to expand Sure Start centres, something that, when you put it to the minister earlier, said we're doing that, but only to an extent. It's a sort of slimmed-down version of it. So I think there maybe is a question about all of that, as well as the fact that we knew that the two-child cap removal would have an impact like this. Why did we need to wait for a full strategy for the government to do it?
I mean, you mentioned the IFS there. The Joseph Roundtree Foundation have welcomed this largely, but the IFS also point out that with the previous Labour government, up until 2010, they lifted, I think it's 1 million kids out of poverty, but said that progress just fell away in subsequent years. I mean, I guess that's because of the closure of Sure Start and other factors. Is this strategy now designed to sort of lock any progress that they make in, if it can even be done?
Well, I think because most of it comes from the two-child cap, you'll find that has an ongoing impact and benefit. I guess from 2010 is when you saw these figures climb. You were going into a period of the introduction of that cap coming in under Osborne as Chancellor and David Cameron as Prime Minister, but also a period of austerity where you saw, money for local services, money for public services being cut back. So, look, this is where the kind of individual measures, I guess, link up with the broader spending plans from the government. They're going to go through a period towards the end of this Parliament where spending on departmental spending does start to get squeezed again. They want to look to try and restrict welfare spending and cut money out of the welfare budget again as well. How do you do that whilst also trying to look after some of the most vulnerable in society as well?
Yeah, and they're hoping for growth, which they hope will raise people's
that's the
standard of
magic
living.
thing that squares the circle, but...
Yeah. Forecasts don't look so good for that at the moment. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Nigel Farage yesterday, getting quite angry yesterday in a news conference.
Yeah, these questions have been following him around for a while about what he may or may not have said some 40 years ago when he was a student at Dulwich College in South London. There were allegations first reported by The Guardian, allegations of making racist comments to Jewish colleagues at Dulwich College. And as such, when he has press conferences nowadays, he tends to get asked about them and had a pretty angry response when he was asked about it yesterday. This is what he said.
Back in the 1970s, the culture was very different. Perhaps, Damon, you should reflect on that. Especially at Dulwich. Lots of boys said things they'd regret today, or just laugh at. Whilst Nigel stood out, he was neither aggressive nor a racist. If I can help in any way, let me know. And I've had plenty of those messages over the course of the last few days, and I'm sick to death of the double standards and hypocrisy, above all, of your organisation. And what happened on the Today programme this morning was a complete bloody disgrace.
Right, when he's laying into the BBC there, he also had some choice words for ITV, I think, as well, because of them broadcasting Bernard Manning back in the 70s as well. And he was reading from a letter that he says he's got from a student, as you say, that is in support of him. But these accusations aren't going anywhere yet. And in fact, The Guardian now reporting they've got 28 former pupils who have now supported their journalism that says that he made racist comments while at school.
And it's also just... I guess he's trying to sort of deflect a little bit and turn it back on some of the people making the accusations in terms of the BBC and ITV. But it's difficult, right? What he's trying to say, that his comments, he doesn't seem to be completely denying them now, but he just sort of says that he didn't mean them in malice.
Yeah, he said, I've never directly racially abused anybody.
And his explanation seems to be that what he said was loosely the same as the way that we look back on programmes from the 1970s, like It Ain't Half Hot, Mum, the black and white minstrel show and things like that, and basically saying, look, this sort of stuff that is seen as racist and inappropriate now was everywhere back then. But I just sort of caution conflating those two. That's not to say that some of the stuff covered in those TV shows and the way that they portrayed certain races and homophobia in it and things like that was okay. It clearly wasn't. But it's not necessarily the same thing as going up to a Jewish student and saying Hitler was right, gas them all. That sort of stuff wasn't happening in TV shows. No. And so this may not necessarily be the response, the sort of indication that he thinks it is. I mean, for my money, the bigger criticism of some of these allegations and the validity of them is the time that they happened 40 years ago. Can you judge someone's political character right now and their suitability for public office by things that they said when they were relatively young, years and years and years ago? I think that is a fair critique and a question of this story. I'm not sure saying, well, on the BBC they were doing inappropriate things as well is necessarily the response.
That's part of a piece of him attacking the BBC. But just on that final point, Robert, not too much time left, but how is it affecting his popularity? Because it will now be up to voters to make that determination whether or not stuff that he's alleged to have said or did say, but without malice back then, affects the person that he is now and whether or not they would vote for him. Is the polling suggesting anything at this point?
Not necessarily. I mean, after we did a live an hour ago, I walked back to my computer in the newsroom and had an email from someone saying, from a viewer saying, well, of course, this is only coming out now because people are trying to get at him and bring him down because he's polling very highly and he's threatening the mainstream establishment. There is a tendency that when you try and go after Nigel Farage and create an argument about that, he's very good at fighting these arguments and having these arguments. And for people that think that he is essentially someone that's coming to shake up the establishment, actually, I think they'd have a lot of time for the sort of excuse, the reason put out by Nigel Farage that they're only doing this now because they're trying to bring me down because they're scared stiff of me. So, look, I'm not entirely convinced that this is going to blow up his polling or blow up Reform's chances over the coming years. But look, it's an important topic, and it's right, I think, that he has asked about it, and his reasons, his answer and his responses have tended to shift from I didn't do it, I didn't say it, to I didn't say it, if I did say it, then there wasn't any malice in it. So there's clearly something there, and it's right that questions are asked. Look, is it the thing that's going to blow up Reform's lead in the polls? I'm not convinced, to be honest.
Interesting stuff.
Interesting, yeah. Thanks, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Now, let's turn to the crisis at Eurovision now, because the BBC is saying that it supports allowing Israel to participate in next year's Eurovision Song Contest, despite 4 countries launching a boycott in protest.
Yeah, Ireland, the Netherlands, Spain and Slovenia say they will not be competing after the majority of broadcasters voted against a move which could have blocked Israel from being a part of it. Well, let's bring on our correspondent Molly Malone for a bit more on this. Molly, morning to you. So look, there was a vote about changes to the rules, which I think passed. So the rules are going to be tightened up to allow, so there's less manipulation. I think the EBU would have hoped. But where does this leave the contest itself, with these 4 nations saying they're not going to take part?
Well, in a huge state of chaos, really, and flux. The whole contest has been pretty divisive this year, but this has sort of erupted as a recent row because of Israel's inclusion in the contest. It's been building, though, for some time. To the extent, as you say, that the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, had said that they would hold an emergency vote over the inclusion of Israel. That was then dropped because the ceasefire in Gaza was announced. And instead, as you say, member countries were given this secret ballot, basically allowed to vote on voting changes, and that was after criticism from some of the broadcasters alleging unfair voting practices in favour of Israel's contestant. But really, it was their chance to sort of voice their concerns, a number of member countries doing so, and clearly there was some frustration about the fact that there then wasn't this very specific vote on Israel's inclusion. So what we then saw was this kind of domino effect of numerous countries boycotting it, pulling out. You said there, 4 of them, the Netherlands, Ireland, Slovenia and Spain. Spain, of course, being a big one. It's a big financial backer of the contest. So it's all pretty problematic. The UK, for their part, in the BBC, the UK's broadcaster, they've issued a statement. They've said the BBC support the collective decision made by members of the EBU. This is about enforcing the rules of the EBU and being inclusive. And we heard this morning from the government, from Alison McGovern, really sounding like she wants people to try and put politics aside. I think we can hear a bit of what she had said.
Some people are really obsessive Eurovision fans. I'm not. But when it came to Liverpool, it was a wonderful time for my city. Everybody had a fabulous time. So I do think it's sad if it can't, if there are issues with Eurovision.
Clearly, though, there are issues, aren't there? I mean, we've heard also from RTE, which is Ireland's broadcaster. They said it feels that Ireland's participation remains unconscionable given the appalling loss of lives in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis there, which continues to put the lives of so many civilians at risk. RTE remains deeply concerned by the targeted killing of journalists in Gaza during the conflict and the continued denial of access to international journalists. But Israel, well, their broadcaster Khan said that attempts to remove them can only be understood as a cultural boycott. And we saw a post on social media from the country's president as well, Isaac Herzog, who said that Israel deserves to be represented on every stage around the world and that he wants the competition to remain one that champions culture, music, friendship between nations and cross-border cultural understanding. This is a contest, as we know, that has long sort of prided itself on being politically neutral. Clearly, at the moment, a number of countries voicing their concerns and actually saying, in their view, politics matters and they want to make their stand.
Yeah, and it's going to be so interesting to see if other countries follow suit. I know these 4 went all at once.
We're still waiting for a couple of them, like Iceland and others, yeah.
Exactly.
You could still say that they're going to then step away.
Yeah, I think in the coming weeks, I think Iceland said they'll make a decision next week. A couple have said that they won't be joining them, like Norway, Denmark, Germany, obviously the BBC in the UK, but yeah, Belgium, Iceland, a couple have yet to say they'll make a decision.
And the idea that it's not political, I mean, do we actually believe, because it's always been slightly political, hasn't it?
Yeah,
right?
Not it's like that's
slightly.
The principle, but we so often see protests. I mean, we saw them last year, didn't we, in Sweden? We saw, you often see particular member nations taking issue with the participation of some others. I mean, Russia being banned in 2022.
Within days of invading Ukraine, they were kicked out of it.
Yeah, so maybe not the last we've heard of this, certainly.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
That's
OK, Molly,
right.
thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Molly. All right, now, speaking of Russia, Putin is in India for talks with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi as the 2 nations look to strengthen their ties.
That's right. A number of different ties, economic, defence, energy. The visit is set to put New Delhi's delicate diplomatic balancing act under the spotlight as it tries to maintain close ties with Moscow while maintaining its relationship with Washington amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. Officials are preparing for a series of agreements to be signed, a move that comes just months after the United States stepped up pressure on India to curb its purchases of Russian oil.
Well, let's go to Russia now and bring in our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett. Ivor, great to have you with us. Thanks for making the time, of course. Now, what do you make of this visit? I mean, it comes hard on the Americans being in Moscow speaking to Putin. What is he hoping to get out of seeing Narendra Modi?
Yeah, morning, Kamali. Morning, Anna. I think for Vladimir Putin, this is all about renewing old ties and expanding them, economically, diplomatically and strategically. India is a top buyer of Russian arms and oil, but that relationship, as you say, has come under huge strain recently from the US, with Donald Trump imposing those sanctions on Delhi and accusing them of fueling Moscow's war machine. And that has seen India's imports of Russian oil dip recently. But it hasn't worked to distance these two countries and their leaders from each other. Far from it, as you'll see from the images of this visit. Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin are closer than ever. There's been a lot of pomp and ceremony during this visit. Modi even took the unusual step of personally meeting Putin at the airport. That is very rare indeed, and it underscores just how much he values his relationship with the Russian president, who's been given the full red carpet treatment. There was a private dinner last night. There's a state banquet later today. And we expect a lot of deals to be signed before Putin heads back to Moscow tonight. And all of this is a further reminder that international isolation is not an issue for him, despite his ongoing pariah status in Europe. And I think this is partly why we're seeing him so uncompromising right now when it comes to Ukraine. Instead of softening his demands amid these ongoing peace talks with the Americans, he appears to be hardening them. Ahead of this visit yesterday, in an interview with Indian media, he vowed to take all of the Donbass by whatever means necessary. So he is doubling down on his demands. And I think part of the reason is because he continues to enjoy the support of important allies like India.
OK, Ivor, for now, thank you so much for that.
Now, a young grooming gang survivor has told Sky News she thought she was going to die while trapped in exploitation.
Yes, Scarlett West is in a new documentary made by Sky with other girls who are also victims of abuse. Well, it follows the long-running controversy over the government's plans to try and deal with the issue of grooming gangs. Let's just take you through how we reached this point. Now, in January of this year, MPs voted against the Conservative bid for a new national inquiry into grooming gangs. But as pressure grew, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, announced that there would, in fact, be one. That was back in June. In late October, 3 survivors of grooming resigned from the inquiry's liaison panel, saying there was a toxic and fearful environment and that they didn't have confidence in the people who'd been shortlisted to be chair of the inquiry. They also said the inquiry was in danger of being watered down. Well, that same week, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, warned about misinformation. Then shortly after, all the survivors who resigned from the panel said they'd consider returning if Jess Phillips resigned.
Well, joining us now are Sky News specialist producers Liz Lane and Sarah O'Connell, who made this documentary. Morning to both of you. I mean, this is a really powerful piece of work. It's incredibly moving in many ways because it's so shocking. Liz, tell us a little bit more about it, because it really relies on the bravery of one survivor who not only is incredibly honest about her own past experience, but she talks to other people who have been through the same thing or are still going through the same thing.
So Scarlett, as you said, is 20. She was trafficked by multiple predators from the age of 14. She's from Manchester. And, you know, we've known her for a number of years now, as have we some of the other girls who are in this film. And we thought who better to actually tell their stories than one of the survivors themselves. So she speaks to these other girls from around the country about their experiences. And, you know, kind of, they're all very young. So one of the girls is actually 15 now, and it's been going on since she's 11, but she's still trapped in it. And it's, you know, the whole point of this is the girls speaking for themselves and trying to let people know that it's still happening, but actually things have changed as well. A lot of the previous reporting has been about stuff that happened a decade or more ago, and this is, it's still ongoing, but things are evolving.
And we have got a little clip we can show people, haven't we?
Yeah, so we have a clip of Scarlett describing how actually her initial groomer was a woman who was 5 years older than her when she was 14.
If guys went near me, she'd kind of be like, leave her alone, like, and make it out like that she was protecting me, and this time she'd left me. And I remember her being in the bathroom for about 40 minutes, and she come out of the bathroom and she just said, she started laughing, like off her head on drugs, and she went, you still sat next to him, you still haven't gone near each other. And then, like, she went in the bathroom again, and obviously that made it clear what she wanted me to do then. And then I just remember being left alone with this, like, grown man, and I don't even remember the night, really. I just remember waking up in the middle of the night to him next to me, Layla in one bed with the other guy, condoms that are open on the floor and stuff, and I just, like, I think I was still on drugs as well, so my head was just going, I just couldn't comprehend, like, what had even gone on. The lads went, and as they were going, I just seen them give her a load of cash, and I think that was, like, the point for me, where I was just too far in it. I'd not realised what had been going on for all these months, and now she was kind of, like, prostituting me out pretty much.
Sarah, look, it's really powerful that we hear Scarlett telling the story in her own words and telling it fully. It's really difficult to hear, but the point that is being made, right, is that this is still happening, and the government have meant to have this inquiry, which hasn't been able to get started because they can't find anyone acceptable enough to lead it.
One of the reasons we wanted to make the film is because a lot of the news coverage is 20 years, victims from 20 years ago, not in any way undermining their experience, and the majority of them haven't seen any justice. But we knew from our work over the past 4 years that this is ongoing. It's happening now. It's happening in every town, in every, all across the country. And we really wanted to reflect that and show that it's a modern day phenomenon. It's not something that happened in Rochdale in 2001.
Now, of course, one of the main points about this is the racial profile of the key perpetrators, and there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that it's predominantly Asian men who've been carrying out these crimes. That was obviously the prevailing narrative for a long time. Your film does reveal that it's wider than that,
and there's nuance in it. I mean, the majority of the girls in the film did say that it was predominantly Asian men, but there are two women that, one of them wasn't in the film, but there's pieces that we've made about her that had exclusively white groomers. It was a white grooming gang, and all of the girls say that while there were predominantly Asian men, that white men, black men, all races have raped them. It's not just an exclusive racial thing. It's across the board.
And there are so many elements of the documentary that are they're very painful, but they're also they illuminate the issue. One of the other issues I thought was really interesting, that Scarlett herself talked about how she'd had a really happy childhood. And, her parents really loved her. She went to private school, she had a horse, and it happened to her. She still fell on hard times and was preyed upon. That was quite telling.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something that we've discovered through our work over the years, talking to these different girls. It's not always your stereotypical girl who becomes targeted. All teenage girls will have some kind of vulnerability, and the groomers prey on that. And in Scarlett's circumstance, she was basically attacked by a gang of youths in her local area, and then she was fearful of them and kind of started hanging around with them because she thought she was better to be in with them than kind of a target. And then one of those gang members raped her, and she felt that the police didn't investigate that properly. Nothing happened with that investigation, and it kind of all began from there. That was a huge turning point for her.
Can we talk a little bit more about the inquiry? As I mentioned, it's not got started yet because the chairs that were put up weren't acceptable to some members of the liaison panel. Now, a couple of members have left, some other members are staying put. I mean, you guys have worked on this all the way through and you've seen the progression of this and you've seen us get to this point now where the government is going to have a national inquiry. What do you put it down to, the difficulty of getting the right people behind this thing?
Well, the actual process of appointing girls to the panel is quite murky, and we have tried to find out...
So this is the victims who have been put on the panel, right?
Yes, well, Scarlett is actually on that panel, but we have asked questions of the Home Office, and we're still looking at how they've gathered those girls together, because we don't really know. So it's not very transparent where these girls have come from. So that's a question that we need to find the answer to, because it's problematic if there's not transparency right from the very start. It's quite essential.
Is that about protecting the people involved themselves and protecting their identity?
We're not asking for names. We're not asking, give us a list of names of girls on the panel. We're asking, where have you found them from? I mean, because apart from Scarlett, none of the young women in the film, all of whom I would think would be ideal candidates to be on that panel, none of them have been approached or asked, and they'd all love to be on it.
They want to be a part of it as
all
well.
of them are desperate to be on it, but nobody's contacted them or asked them, and they're very modern-day cases, so why they're not included? But we don't know how they found them. We don't know how they found them.
Really interesting stuff. Sarah and Liz, thank you so much for coming in and telling us a little bit more about this documentary. We should tell everyone it's on tonight, isn't it?
Yes, 9 p.m. on Sky News, and it's on YouTube already.
Yeah, but we are going to carry on talking about this subject because we can actually speak to Scarlett's father now, Marlon West, who's in Hyde for us now. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. Your daughter has made this incredibly moving and shocking documentary highlighting what she went through, but also an alarming number of other girls have experienced as well. You must be very proud of her, but how hard was it for you to watch?
I am. I'm so proud of her, and she's come so far compared to only a few years ago. I have watched it, and I'm not going to lie, it was really difficult to watch because it just brings it all back to me, and there was definitely parts in it that brought a tear to my eye. Some of the things in the documentary I didn't know because I didn't ask. What it actually did was get me angry because of so many missed opportunities with her case, and so many other girls as well.
Marlon, it's Kamali here. Morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Look, everyone can understand that anger, but I wonder if that anger is compounded by the fact that we're still in this point now where the inquiry hasn't got going and we're not going to be looking into what happened then and as Sarah and Liz have told us this morning, what is still happening now.
Yeah, and it is still happening now. And, I'm involved in Rupert Lowe's inquiry, so I'm speaking to so many other girls, as well as Scarlett, obviously, and nothing's changing. And services, not just social services, the police as well, are still not stopping this from happening. And even as I'm speaking, I'm getting upset.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's very kind of you to talk to us about this because it must be very difficult and bring up lots of really hard memories for you, Marlon, so we do appreciate it. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the police in Scarlett's case?
So, Scarlett, which you've already reported on, one example, Scarlett was the young girl in the Baird inquiry. And she'd gone missing for a couple of weeks, and then when the police actually found her, they did a strip search on her, and she'd been, over that 2-week period, she'd been trafficked and raped. How inappropriate to do that to a young girl. And this is the behaviour that the police have been doing to these young girls. And again, speaking to other survivors, Scarlett's not the only one. And the bit for me is the police are there to protect them, not to not to treat them in this way.
Okay, Marlon, look, we really appreciate you joining us today. Sorry, we've run short of time. There's so much more I wanted to ask you, but thank you, and perhaps we can speak again, because obviously this is a continuing issue that we're going to be focused very closely on. Of course, I wish you all the very best to you and your family, Marlon. Thank you very much for being with us. Really do appreciate it. And thank you, Liz and Sarah, for your reporting. And obviously, there's more to come from you guys as well, isn't there? And the documentary is going to be out tonight at 9, and it's on the YouTube channel right now. All right, thank you guys. Keep up the work. Thank you so much.
Now, coming up, we're going to be taking a look at the top-performing schools for 2026. We've got Louise Eccles from the Sunday Times coming in with the breakdown. Stay with us.
Hello there and welcome back. Welcome back. Now, the UK's top schools have been named this morning, and among the winners are the Queen Elizabeth School in Barnet. You know that one, Anna, don't you?
Yeah, that's in London. Yeah, also the West London Free School.
The North London Collegiate School.
And Thomas Jones Primary School.
Well done to all those guys.
On the list, yeah. And the rankings are from the Sunday Times Parent Power Guide. And we're joined now by the paper's Education and Early Years editor, Louise Eccles. Very good morning to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. My kids are quite old now, but I do remember that stage where you're thinking about schools and trying to work out which schools close to you are good and all of that. It's quite a big issue for parents, isn't it? So tell us, first of all, how you rank schools. What do you base your rankings on?
Yeah, so we've been doing this for 33 years now. It was before even the government produced their own database. And we do it mostly on academics, so GCSE results and A-level results, and then those schools are ranked. We do then pick winners, so best state school, and sorry, best comprehensive school, best independent, and there's a bit of editorial discretion in that.
We've detailed just
absolutely,
there, isn't it?
yeah.
And were you surprised by the winners? I mean, Anna, as soon as you saw the one that won, you were like, I remember that school.
Yeah, it's a grammar school, the Queen Elizabeth School, for example, isn't it? Because I remember lots of kids in our area were trying to get in, take the exams to get into it.
Yeah, I don't know about surprise, but what I've liked this year is that there's quite a diverse mix of schools. So you've got, for example, Queen Elizabeth's, where they're 400 years old. They've got this beautiful, lush 23-acre site with, state-of-the-art swimming pool. But then you've got Comprehensive School of the Year, where they haven't got a blade of grass. They're only 15 years old. They're in a converted office block, and they're saying, look what we can do with very little. So it's amazing that both have these extraordinary academic achievements, despite very different situations. And I think some of that comes down to ethos. And they will say, well, we put pastoral care first. We say that happy children create good results. And they also seem to all talk about we really carefully recruit and retain staff.
So those are the common themes, would you
Yeah.
say? Do you think you can pick out certain elements of each school that successful schools have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the state schools, you can see where they're really using things in the same way private schools have for many years. Like their alumni, they'll get them in and they'll do mock interviews, they'll mentor the children, they do a lot of fundraising, the top ones often, so they can earn up to £100,000 a year via their parent-teacher associations. But they're also very big on pastoral care. So, for example, they'll do one-to-one with the head teacher and one-to-one with form tutors to sort of troubleshoot any issues that students are having and make sure that they're doing well.
That's so interesting, because there's lots of debate about, people who are happy in the workplace and more productive, and it makes sense for kids as well.
Absolutely.
They're just going to be more receptive if they're happy, they feel looked after.
And of course, reinforcing that point about the staff, the teachers, the heads, the ones that are running these schools that are some of the most important people in all of this, in a successful school. Now, most of these schools are private schools, right? Fee-paying schools.
So the top 100, 78 are fee-paying. But it's amazing to see that the state schools are catching up in the top 100 list.
They are catching up. That was going to be my next question.
Absolutely. So they're actually rising significantly faster than the private schools through our rankings.
Isn't it, that 78 out of 100 are private school. When what's the percentage
Absolutely.
of kids that go to private school in
About
this country?
6%.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
it is extraordinary. But things are changing in the list, and you can see that over the 33 years. They're very ambitious, the state schools. And as I say, they're deploying some of the same techniques, the alumni and the fundraising, and just being very ambitious.
We've taken on, sorry, Anna, but my next question then, because if you guys have been running this for 33 years, you'll have seen some of the changes, the bringing of the academy sector, various different sort of attempts to try and raise the state sector up to a different level. Are you seeing that now, would you say, starting to have some rewards, or is it still a real challenge for the state sector?
It's a very big challenge for the state sector at the moment because of budget constraints, and you hear the teachers saying that again and again, but they're still doing extraordinary things. And actually what we've seen is that the results this year have been amazing, considering this is the COVID generation. And you might have thought we will see a big impact on that, but children still doing incredible things despite all the challenges at the moment.
And talking of government policy as well, the VAT on private schools, what impact has that had?
We've seen 17,000 fewer children year on year in the private sector, according to the Independent Schools Council. Some grammar schools say they are, and the highly selective, the top schools, say they are seeing more applications from parents and partly attribute that to VAT. We're seeing a falling birth rate, so that could be a short-term trend, and we might not see it be quite as competitive as it is currently.
That's really interesting. Well, Louise Eccles, thanks very much indeed. Lots of food for thought for parents thinking about schools.
Very happy with the school that my 5-year-old's at for now, but there's another choice coming up a little bit later on, isn't there, when he gets to that age. All right, now, we're going to go to a small town in Yorkshire.
Yes.
It's been declared the happiest place to live in the whole country.
I know, it's Skipton, and it's been recognised for its warm community spirit and its lively streets. Plus, it even offers scenic views as a gateway to the Yorkshire Dales National Park.
It certainly does. We're joined...
Fancy going now.
Let's make our way, get on the train. We're joined by Ian Regalsman, who is from Skipton Building Society and also, of course, lives in Skipton. Don't you, Ian? Good morning to you and congratulations on living in the happiest town.
Yeah, great stuff. It's fantastic, isn't it? What an amazing accolade.
It is, but did it come as a surprise to you? Do you feel like you're living in a happy town?
Absolutely. I mean, it hasn't come as a surprise to me at all. It's a brilliant place to live and work, and Skipton Building Society colleagues know that better than anyone. We've got a winning formula for happiness, we think. Stunning countryside, it's a vibrant market town, there's a really strong sense of community. And, you know, as you just pointed out, Skipton is the gateway to the Yorkshire Dales. It's literally minutes away. So, you know, you can finish work in the summer and be out walking the fells in the afternoon. And yet we're still really well connected to major cities. And to top it all, we've got great schools, low crime and a lively local culture. And one of the things that Skipton does every year, we do our Skipton Group Home Affordability Index. And that shows that Skipton is actually more affordable to live in than the average in the UK. So, you know, it's a really, really great place to live.
I think the average house price is about 326,000. So anyone living in London will see that that is much, much cheaper than what you'd be looking at around here. It's only got a population of 15,000, though. I mean, you know, small but mighty, good things come in small packages, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I think given its location, it's the sort of largest town for several miles around. So it's a real focus point for the local community from the villages around to come and visit.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about location, actually. Do you think that's a key part of it, the fact that you've got access to bigger cities if you want to go to bigger cities, but crucially you've got access to the Yorkshire Dales? Do you think it's partly the geography that's helping you here?
Absolutely. It's the best of both worlds. You know, you've got the Dales on your doorstep. You're only an hour or so from the Lake District, and yet Leeds is just 40 minutes on the train, you know, and we've got good access to Harrogate, and it's not even that far to get to Manchester, so it's really well connected.
You're talking it up, Ian. We're going to have an influx of people trying to find themselves out.
Yes, that's a good point, yeah.
In Skipton. Having a little look at some of the facts about Skipton, I told you how many people live there, but also happy to discover that one of the co-founders of Marks and Spencer is from Skipton as well, Thomas Spencer.
Absolutely.
Did you know? Any other famous...
I did know that, actually, yes. It's one of those little accolades that Skipton has.
Any other famous people from Skipton?
That's a really good question. There's probably some better people than I who would know that.
I shouldn't put you on the spot like that
that was
anyway.
unfair.
So I was going to ask you whether or not you'd ever be tempted to move, but I think I know the answer.
I think you'll stay in. We could do a house swap.
Oh, no, I mean, I think Skipton is where I'm going to end up, really. It's a great place to live.
Oh, well, it's so nice.
Isn't
that
it?
You love where you live, and it does look like it's got so much going for it. Ian Rigglesford, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm loving these pictures. I wish we could get some on a nice sunny day as well, because I'm sure it looks even more beautiful when there are blue skies. The rest of the list, then, because I'm sure you're interested to see whether or not your town or location is in the top 10 happiest places. Skipton is top, as we've been saying. Richmond upon Thames next. Camden. After that, Harrogate, and then Woodbridge, Altrincham, Macclesfield, Stirling, Cirencester.
Yeah.
And then Hexham. There's not as many in the south there as I expected there to be. I suppose that's normally for house prices where the south comes up, right? But for happiness, got to move up the country.
Happiness.
Shame Nottingham's not on there, but maybe one year.
We're going to talk about ghosts
soon.
Yeah, we are.
You didn't warn me about this.
Yeah, I know. It's actually the author of a book called Do You Believe in Ghosts? A question I'm going to ask Kamali in the break.
And I will give you my full answer.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
The founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Now, before we left, Joanna asked me a question, whether or not I believe in ghosts. The answer is no, but our next guest is a supernatural expert who explores paranormal experiences.
I don't think he's actually supernatural.
No?
But he's an expert in the supernatural. Or is he?
Try it, go on.
It's Danny Robbins who believes that ghost stories can help kids overcome fears, and with that in mind, he's written a new spooktacular book.
I always make you do those puns. I'm sorry, I'm sorry about that.
I'm take no responsibility for that. Danny, lovely to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. So tell us a little bit more about your role as an expert in the supernatural.
Oh, well, yes, good question. So I've been obsessed by ghosts since I was a kid. I was that kid who grew up reading books about ghosts in the school library. And, you know, it's something that's kind of been a little itch I wanted to scratch for a long time. Then I found myself writing a play called 222, A Ghost Story, that some people might know, that starred Lily Allen in the West End. And as doing that, I researched a lot. I spoke to a lot of people and said, have you seen a ghost, basically? And it started off as friends and friends of friends and then strangers. And it kind of gave me this reservoir of ghost stories that became these podcasts that I made. I made The Battersea Poltergeist first, then Uncanny, The Witch Farm, and now Uncanny has gone on to be a TV series as well. So it's kind of spawned into something that I never really imagined I would be doing. I've become...
whole ghost industry.
Yeah. I've been hailed as the UK's go-to ghost guy. Wow. Even in one newspaper, so I don't know how that happened.
A confession, the trailers for Uncanny I can't listen to because they do creep me out.
Yeah,
I don't really want to hear these kinds of stories. So look, tell us about some of these stories that you are being told and what it is that grabs you about them, because is it just the fact that some of them just feel too unexplained?
I think it's in many cases, it's the fact that it's such ordinary situations and ordinary people, and yet extraordinary things. And I think, you know, we've been brought up on a diet of ghost stories that is headless horse people and you know, stately homes and castles, that kind of thing. And this is just very ordinary streets, ordinary houses, but totally bizarre, terrifying things happening, poltergeist activity, apparitions, all of these kind of things. And I am intrigued by these, you know, if it can happen to these people, could it happen to me?
And everyone you've spoken to, you trust, you believe that they're telling you...
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Credible, they feel like real people.
Oh, sitting like, you know, this next to them, looking in their eyes.
Directly in their eyes and telling
feeling
the story.
The fear they felt. And maybe after decades, you know, decades later, I spoke to one woman who's in her 80s now about something that happened to her in her teens in the 1950s. This was the Battersea Poltergeist case, this 12-year-long poltergeist case. And I could feel the tremble in her voice. And looking at her, still scared after all this time. Yeah.
But would you stick your neck out and say whether or not you believed in ghosts?
Oh, well, I want to, so much. You know, I mean, you know, if you write a book called Do You Believe in Ghosts, you should have an answer for that.
Pose the question.
You know, I am torn. You know, I would love to believe in this. It's the most magical idea.
Is it a magical idea? Because it is quite scary, and I'm really fascinated by why people are drawn to these. Even if they don't believe in ghosts, they're still drawn to these
This is interesting, because I've had to think a lot about this, writing a book for kids, you know, about this scary factor. And, you know, we think of ghost stories as really scary, but actually, when you boil them down, when you look at them through a kid's eyes, they take you into the realms of history, science, how our universe works. You know, it's like time travel. You know, it's not us going back to the past. It's the past coming to us. You know, what would you say to a Victorian or an Elizabethan if you could meet them? The other day, I was told this amazing story in Stockport, whilst I was on tour, about a woman who'd looked out of her window and seen a deer running across the local football field, chased by a caveman throwing a spear that hit the deer.
Way.
And, you know, what is this? Is this a hallucination?
After a big night
sleep?
out,
I was going to say, exactly.
Fancy dress party.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was very, very intriguing, very convincing. I love these stories. I love the realms they take us into.
Bringing it back to, like, the seriousness. Viewers may remember this show Ghostwatch back in the 90s.
Absolutely.
I remember being terrified by watching it with Mum, and the BBC had to answer a load of complaints after that because it was basically a spoof. You know, they set up this thing to look like Crime Watch. It was about Ghostwatch. It had Sarah Green, Michael Parkinson fronted it. Tragically, someone actually was so terrified by it that they had a family tragedy as well. I mean, do you ever feel like, when you're getting into this kind of world, there's a responsibility to just not to take it too far sometimes? Yeah,
I think it's. I mean, I think a lot of the sort of legend that's grown around Ghostwatch is. I think there's some degree of urban legend to that. I think it was.
Really?
You know, yeah. I mean, particularly those kind of stories. But I think there was. You know, it was incredible the way that it created this event around Halloween, and I think absolutely, I feel a responsibility. I think it's a subject that takes us into some kind of serious questions, doesn't it? And it's. Basically, you could argue that all of the reasons we've founded religions are the same reasons we are intrigued by ghosts, making sense of what lies beyond. But particularly with the people who speak to me, I think, it's a brave thing to put yourself out there, to say I've seen a ghost
face the ridicule,
in our modern world. Absolutely. People will react to you in a whole range of ways. What we have created, I think, with Uncanny particularly, is this safe space. People feel OK talking about this. Now I have people sitting in a room of 2,000 people when I'm on tour telling me a ghost story that they've not even told their partner, that they've never been able to say out loud before. People come on television and do that. People come on the podcast. There are millions of people around the world listening to these stories that they've not been able to tell their friends. And the nice thing is that's because we've created this climate, rare in our world, I think, where people listen without judgment, with an open mind. And whether you're team believer or team skeptic, you approach it in your own way. So, social media is so divided, we know that. Everyone takes a stance. But this is one little safe space where you can agree to disagree.
Really interesting stuff. Yeah, Danny, thanks.
Still got to listen to your trailers, but I do appreciate the work that you're doing. Creeps me out too much, but thank you very much for being with us. All the very best.
And do let us know what you think out there as well.
Any ghost stories that you may have that we can read and terrify ourselves about. Now, might be scary for England fans and Scotland fans as they find out later who they're going to be playing in the World Cup. The draw is taking place later on today in Washington, DC, and it will reveal all those 12 groups of the 48-team tournament, the first time it's ever been held across 3 countries.
Yeah, those countries, Mexico, Canada and the US, and those 3 are already locked into groups A, B and D. The ceremony is also going to reveal the winner of the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize. Who do you think might get that?
I do wonder. Someone who likes shiny golden things and wanted to win a Nobel Prize. Any guesses? Well, our sports correspondent Rob Harris has this.
This is for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well.
Of all the world leaders who've been inside here at the White House since Donald Trump returned for a second term in power, no one has been here more often than Gianni Infantino.
Probably the most respected man in sports.
But he doesn't head a country. He leads FIFA, World Football's governing body. And there's been so much intrigue about how this close alliance is built between Infantino and Trump. At the heart of it is the World Cup next year, with Infantino wanting those close government ties to ensure the tournament passes off successfully, and President Trump seeing what an opportunity it is having the world's biggest sporting event. He knows what Trump wants to hear, just recently publicly backing his political agenda for change.
He says what he thinks. He says actually what many people think as well, but maybe don't dare to say, and that's why he's so successful. Right. We should all support what he's doing, because I think he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
When you go all in, it can be hard to distance yourself. So there's been no hint of criticism when Trump has been threatening to take World Cup matches away from Democrat-run cities he believes are not safe.
If we think there's going to be a problem, we'll... Johnny, can I say we will move? I don't think you're going to have this problem, but we're going to move the event to some place where it's going to be appreciated and safe.
Yeah, well, I think safety and security is the #1 priority.
I asked a Seattle World Cup official about Trump disparaging them. Is your city a
Absolutely not. Our city is amazing.
Does it not annoy you?
Our city is extremely safe, and we know folks will see that when they come out to visit next summer.
They'll discover which teams will visit after Friday's World Cup draw, which is being attended by Trump. An event designed to please the president, indulging his passions. To win a Peace Prize, one's being handed out by FIFA after his frustrations about being denied the Nobel version. And even the 70s disco group The Village People will be there to perform his campaign song YMCA. Expect the Trump dance, expect the unexpected. But one of soccer's most prominent Trump backers told me there's nothing wrong with the World Cup being politicised like this.
Is it be a bit of a Trump show? No, I mean, sports are inherently, I think, political. And so, obviously with our president so heavily invested and involved, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive thing. And I'm certain that, he loves a good show.
A show that should also be about Canada and Mexico as well. This super-sized World Cup being staged across 3 countries, but it all seems very much about Donald Trump. Rob Harris, Sky News, Washington.
And of course, many are looking forward to that draw. It's at 5 o'clock UK time. Of course, we'll have live coverage of it. We'll see Trump get his new Peace Prize. I'm sure he's going to be delighted with that. And see who England gets to play and who Scotland gets to play.
Yeah, let's hope they're not in the same group.
No, I don't.
Don't you
I'm
think?
not sure if they can be joined in the same. I don't know which pots they're in. Yeah. They'll play each other in the knockouts. I hope both teams get through the groups, of course, because that's what you want, and then going through the tournament. I'm very excited about it.
Maybe they can meet each other in the final.
There you go, exactly. Wouldn't that be great? An England-Scotland final. What excitement to look forward to in a massive World Cup. All right, now, before we leave you, we're going to take you to Chester Zoo.
We are, because 2 of the world's rarest lions have arrived there as part of efforts to save the endangered breed from extinction.
Yeah, a male named Nilay and a female called Shanti travelled to the zoo from Germany. Conservationists say that the pair formed an instant connection. That is nice, isn't it? Instant connectivity. And they hope that they will go on to have cubs in the future. I don't think lions are as fussy as pandas are about having cubs, so they might be lucky. All right.
Yeah, that's always... Panda watch is always an interesting thing to do. Top stories next.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
and a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Keir Starmer says he'll tackle what he's calling the moral issue of child poverty. His critics say, apart from scrapping the two-child benefit cap, the plans don't add up to much.
Eurovision is in crisis as 4 countries pull out. As Israel's told, it can compete next year.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin is in India as the Kremlin says that Russia is working very actively with the US on a deal to end the war in Ukraine.
We're going to hear from the chair of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollinrake, who's going to join us in just a few minutes.
And as well as an actual politician, we're also going to speak to Matt Ford, who impersonates big-name leaders. Hello, a very good morning. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, the government is announcing its child poverty strategy today. It's pledged to stop children growing up in bed and breakfasts and to make childcare more accessible for families on universal credit. But charities and campaign groups are already saying that it doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, a record 4.5 million children are currently living in poverty in the UK, and tackling child poverty is a totemic issue for many within this Labour government. The Chancellor scrapped the two-child benefit cap in the recent budget, a move which she hoped would stop the rebellion within her own party breaking out over their manifesto pledge not to raise tax. Well, our political correspondent Rob Powell is here with us for a bit more on this. So, Rob, how much further does this actually go? Morning to you, first of all.
Morning.
How much further does this actually go from the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap?
Not massively further. I mean, about 80% of it is two-child cap reversal in terms of people being taken out of poverty. There are some other measures in there as well. We can run through them. Obviously, as we say, two-child benefit cap from April next year is the main one. So if you have more than 2 kids, then your financial support will no longer be limited. There's also more funding initiatives to basically help people back into work who are moving off universal credit and going back into work. £8 million being made available as well to end long-term placement of families in bed and breakfasts, and reforms making baby formula more affordable as well. So there is other stuff in there. There's not necessarily reams of stuff that's come completely from nowhere and is completely new. And as I say, when the IFS have looked through this, they say out of the 550,000 that will be lifted out of poverty, about 450,000 of that is the two-child benefit cap. So that's doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and we've heard criticism from the opposition about lifting that cap for various reasons. They will argue, the opposition, that Labour's just using the welfare system to tackle this issue.
Yeah, well, I guess they are, right? And it is a political argument, basically, about whether the way to bring people out of poverty is basically to spend more taxpayer money to give out more benefits, basically. The moral argument the government will make is, look, it's not the choice of the child living in poverty to have been brought into the world, and that actually if you put a bit of money in now, you get more back in the long run, because what you're hopefully doing is giving the child in question a better start in life, helping with school, helping with their education, which should mean in the long run they will be less reliant on the state and benefits. So it's a bit of money now to save money in the long run is the economic argument. The moral argument, of course, is that if you can take kids out of poverty, why wouldn't you?
And are they happy to have that fight with the opposition? We saw some of it at PMQs this week, and I think last week as well. Sort of when there are accusations and jeers from the opposition benches, the response from the Prime Minister is, look at the Conservatives complaining about us taking kids out of poverty. It feels like a fight they kind of want to have on that.
I think to an extent. I think there's definitely not complete... I don't think everyone is necessarily wholly comfortable with this move as a policy, though. I mean, look, they've been in power 18 months and they've only just done it, right? We knew the evidence for the extent to which it would bring children out of poverty has always been there. What's changed? Well, one of the arguments about what's changed is that in the last 18 months, Labour's poll rating has got very bad, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves needed something to offer the backbenchers, never mind offer families out there. And this is something that goes down very well with Labour backbenchers. Child poverty and alleviating child poverty is a moral mission for why many of the people in the Labour Party got into politics. The flip of it, though, is the attack you hear from the Conservatives, which is this is billions of pounds of extra spending that is taxpayer money being paid for by considerable tax rises and the tax burden being taken to the highest that it's ever been. So, look, the polling on this across the country is much more mixed. So I think now they're leaning into this fight, but they weren't 18 months ago. They were saying the opposite, that we couldn't afford to do this. And I think the Conservatives will happily lean into this fight as well, because they believe, I think quite rightly, there is a sizable proportion of people out there that will side with them when they make the argument, why should someone on benefits not have to make the same choices about having more kids that someone not claiming benefits?
And you'll get the view of the Tories shortly on that.
Some Kevin Holland rake in a bit.
What they say. In the meantime, let's talk about Nigel Farage, because quite an angry moment for him yesterday at his news conference.
Yeah, for weeks now, since the publication of a Guardian article alleging essentially racist comments that he made when he was at Dulwich College in a posh school in the south of London, he's been faced with questions about what exactly he said and what the context was in which he said them as well. Yesterday, he was asked about it again at a press conference and read out a note, essentially a message he'd got from someone that he was at school with. This is what he said.
Back in the 1970s, the culture was very different. Perhaps, Damon, you should reflect on that. Especially at Dulwich. Lots of boys said things they'd regret today, or just laugh at. Whilst Nigel stood out, he was neither aggressive nor a racist. If I can help in any way, let me know. And I've had plenty of those messages over the course of the last few days, and I'm sick to death of the double standards and hypocrisy, above all, of your organisation. And what happened on the Today programme this morning was a complete bloody disgrace.
Well, we can see at the end of that clip he's laying to the BBC. He's also got words for ITV as well. So he's got a letter from someone in support. The Guardian now say they have 28 people who allege that he was racist while at Dulwich College. How do you view that comparison that he's making by the things that were on television in the 70s, 60s, 70s and 80s that were offensive then and we wouldn't want to see now, compared to the accusations that he's facing, that he said maybe offensive things then that he says without malice, and how that reflects on who he is now?
I'm not sure it quite stacks up, if I'm honest with you. There, of course, over the last 10 to 20 years mainly has been a sort of reappraisal of some of the topics for comedy, topics for, I guess, fictional telly a long time ago. But I think to try and say that the type of comments he's accused of making, we're talking about going up to Jewish pupils and saying Hitler was right, to try and say, well, that's the same thing as comedy that was around in the 1970s that at the time was assumed to be fine and clearly, with the benefit of hindsight now is not good. Yeah. To say that's basically the same thing, I don't think quite stacks up, because I don't think that comedy programmes even of the day, in the 1970s, would talk about Hitler was right, gas them all and things like that. It seems to be a different order there. I think, though, the point that, the sort of broader point maybe that he's making as a criticism to these allegations is more valid. To what extent can you, I guess, judge the kind of values, I guess, the worth of a public figure and their worth of being in the public eye and in politics by comments that were made, 3 or 4 decades ago? That is one of the defences there as well, which seems to me a more valid defence, but I think it's also perfectly valid to be exploring what he said a long time ago, because they are pretty outrageous things he's accused of saying. And the defence from the Reform leader has seemed to have shifted with time from an outright denial to I would never do it and racially abuse anyone. So I think asking the question is perfectly fine. I'm not sure whether this defence completely stacks up, but that's not to say that this story is a complete slam dunk.
Yeah, questions will continue, I am sure. Rob, thank you for that.
Now, let's turn to a crisis at Eurovision now. The BBC is saying that it's supporting allowing Israel to participate in next year's Eurovision Song Contest, despite 4 countries launching a boycott in protest.
Yeah, Ireland, the Netherlands, Spain and Slovenia will not be competing after the majority of broadcasters voted against the move, which could have blocked Israel from being a part of it. Well, our correspondent Molly Malone is following this one for us this morning. So, Molly, morning to you. Why don't you tell us how we managed to reach this point where these 4 countries have decided that they're not going to take part?
Yeah, we almost got sort of a continent divided over it, really, haven't we? It's been a row that's been brewing for a while, and it's about the inclusion of Israel in the competition. The EBU, which is the European Broadcasting Union, which coordinates Eurovision, had said that they'd hold this emergency vote for member nations to vote about the inclusion of Israel. That was then pulled because a ceasefire was announced in Gaza, and instead member countries were asked to vote in a ballot about tougher new rule changes. And then that was after criticism from some broadcasters who were alleging unfair voting practices in favour of Israel's contestant. This was yesterday in their General Assembly, and I think really it was the opportunity for these member nations to express their discontent about the fact that there wasn't this specific vote about Israel being included, and the kind of domino effect of one following the next. We've had Netherlands, Ireland, Slovenia and Spain. Spain is a big one. It's considered one of the main five, a big financial backer of the contest. So it's in a real state of chaos, flux. It's pretty problematic for the contest. We've had a statement from the BBC, obviously representing the UK as the UK's broadcaster. They've said the BBC support the collective decision made by members of the EBU. They said this is about enforcing the rules of the EBU and being inclusive. So that's their position on the matter. We've also heard from the government in Alison McGovern essentially saying that she wants, by the sounds of it, people to put politics aside and enjoy the competition. This is what she had to say.
Some people are really obsessive Eurovision fans. I'm not. But when it came to Liverpool, it was a wonderful time for my city. Everybody had a fabulous time. So I do think it's sad if it can't, if there are issues with Eurovision.
But clearly there are quite significant issues. We've talked about it before, haven't we? Political kind of opinion dividing the contest, but this feels like a particularly significant one. We've also heard from the Irish broadcaster, one of the boycotting nations. They've said RTE feels that Ireland's participation remains unconscionable given the appalling loss of lives in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis there, which continues to put the lives of so many civilians at risk. RTE, the broadcaster, remains deeply concerned by the targeted killing of journalists in Gaza during the conflict and the continued denial of access to international journalists. Well, Israel's broadcaster, Khan, said that they feel the attempts to remove them and the conversation about it amounts to a cultural boycott. And we also heard from the country's president, Isaac Herzog. He said that Israel deserves to be represented on every stage around the world, and he wants the competition to remain one that champions culture, music, friendship between nations and cross-border cultural understanding. So we've still got a few nations sort of yet to make a decision. We had quite quick succession yesterday evening, but it certainly feels like this is a kind of continent, divided over this competition and Israel's participation.
Yeah, and really interesting to see if other countries do pull out. I mean, we've also seen in previous competition that certain artists have pressure put on them, perhaps to withdraw. There was the risk of protests as well, wasn't there? So even if it's just 4 countries that do decide in the end not to go, it may not be the end of the story.
I think so, yeah. That we've seen over the years, like we were saying before, it's often said that it's not political, it's not a political contest, but it seems to creep in each time. We saw protests last year, we saw Russia banned in 2022, I think just days after their invasion of Ukraine. So it seems that it's political quite often, but this time it feels quite significant and they're all pretty divided over it.
I mean, is there any sense that it's kind of diminishing Eurovision? It's a hugely popular thing across all of Europe. It's interesting, as you say, that Spain are one of the ones that pulled out because they do invest quite a lot in this, and it's a big old event that is put on. And I wonder if die-hard Eurovision fans, what impact this decision will actually have. And as Anna says, we don't know what may well come next.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in May, actually, how it all sort of pans out and how the public feel about it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Really interesting topic. Molly, thanks very much indeed. Clearly, the politics around that is going to continue, and difficult when you're going through the process of choosing your artist to take part with that kind of backdrop, I guess.
I mean, it's really difficult for them all involved because, of course, as Molly said, it's not meant to be a political competition, but yet every single...
It's supposed to be a unifying, joyful...
It's meant to be.
A joyful event, isn't it? We've got lots coming up for you. We're going to be talking to the Conservatives in just a moment, and also we're going to get the latest on the Russian President Putin's visit to India. That's coming up after the break.
I'd wake up with really bad bruises and I don't have a clue where they come from. That's how I knew I'd been raped. I'm not the only one it's happened to, and it's still happening.
Couldn't even move, and I just remembered, sorry, I'm gonna cry.
You just have to have sex with these people just so you can be safe and not be killed.
Just felt like I will end up dead.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, let's just take you live to New Delhi in India, where, as you can see, President Putin is currently speaking. He's on a two-day visit to the country, embraced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi ahead of this summit, which is held by both countries. I'm not sure if we've got a translation on what he's saying. Let's just have a quick listen in, shall we?
Pacific economic bloc of both countries have set objectives to remove barriers hampering the goods flows and capitals, the implementation of joint projects and deep technology and innovation cooperation. And distinguished Prime Minister gave us a whole list of challenges that deserve the most attentive focus of our government. We will do that. The growth of Russian-Indian commercial links would be helped by the creation of a free trade zone between India and the Eurasian Economic Union. We are already conducting work on the corresponding agreement. I would like to note with satisfaction that our countries are gradually moving to the use of national currencies in mutual settlements. The share of these national currencies is already 96% in commercial deals. We have established resilient channels of credit, financial and interbanking cooperation. Russian economic operators have broadened the sphere of use of Indian rupees, which we receive from the fulfillment of export contracts. Russian rubles are being used to provide loans for large joint projects. We are also seeing successful partnership in energy. Russia is a reliable supplier of oil, gas, coal, and everything that is required for the development of India's energy. We are ready to continue uninterrupted shipments of fuel for the fast-growing Indian economy. Of course, the bilateral interaction in energy does not limit to that.
We're going to step away from President Putin for a moment. We're staying in the country, bringing in our India reporter Neville Lazarus, who's covering this two-day summit for us. Neville, great to have you with us on all of this. So look, Putin there sort of laying out some of the deals that have been done. And interesting, just as we did step away, he was talking about energy. And that is an important factor for the Indian-Russia relationship, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. India is deficient in the hydrocarbons. It's one of the largest importer of oil and gas, and that's why it's come under immense pressure and punished by the Americans. Now, India, which was importing just about 2% in 2021 of Russian oil, has suddenly, through these last 3 years, gone up to 40% of Russian imports of oil to the country. Now, this brought it into confrontation with President Trump, who in August this year levied a 25% punishment tax on India, raising the total tariffs the country is facing to about 50%, one of the highest in the world. And this, the American administration said, was because of national security concerns, and that the profits made by Russia of these exports of discounted oil to India was fueling Moscow's war machine in Ukraine. India refuted these allegations, saying that it was because of its own energy security. But nevertheless, a lot of pressure on India from America, and they will be scrutinized very closely by Washington and other European capitals of how this meeting goes between the two leaders.
Yeah. OK, Neville, for now, thank you so much for that. And just as Neville was talking there, we got a line coming across the Newswires about what Putin has been saying. As Neville was mentioning there is the supply of hydrocarbons from Russia to India that have been sanctioned, and the Americans trying to put pressure on the Indians not to buy any more Russian oil. Well, Putin has just said in the last few minutes that Russia is ready to provide uninterrupted fuel supplies to India. Just because he says it doesn't mean it will happen, but it reinforces, I think, as Neville was saying there, the desire by Putin to try and form this tight relationship with India. It will now be incumbent on that Indian leadership as to whether or not they choose to go with the Russians or turn back towards the United States and the West. We'll keep a close eye on what's happening, of course, in India with Putin on that visit, and we'll be back with Neville and team throughout the day. But for now, let's get some of the views on the day's news from the opposition. The chair of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollinrake, is standing by for us. Kevin Hollinrake, thanks so much for being with us. We do appreciate you taking up some of your time to speak to us today. I'm not going to ask you about the situation in India, but I do want to ask you about some of the government news this morning. They say they've got their new policy now to lift more children out of poverty. I mean, I presume this is one of the rare occasions where you agree that that is a good thing and should be done, and this is the right kind of policy for the government to be pursuing.
Well, we agree on the intention in terms of lifting children out of poverty, of course, and anyone who's in poverty, we want to lift them out of poverty, of course. But it's the way you do that, and the best way of doing that, of course, is making sure there's access to well-paid work, and that's the opposite of what this government's doing. Is you're seeing significant rises in unemployment since they took over, about 180,000 fewer jobs in our economy now, and many of those jobs have been lost in key sectors that are accessed by people who are moving into work, such as hospitality, pubs, restaurants, or retail. All those things have been completely hammered by new government policies, not least the jobs tax last year, which really hit the hospitality and leisure industries and retail industries very hard. And now a big rise in business rates. The average pub now £11,000 a year worse off because of Labour's policies. All this will affect jobs, as will the Employment Rights Bill. So there's a toxic mix, really, in terms of people who want to enter the place of work, which is the best way to lift people their children out of poverty.
Yeah, backing the intention, but not the way they're getting there. I want to talk to you, if I can, Kevin, about something that was said earlier this week by Nigel Farage. She told donors there's going to be a merger between Reform UK and the Conservatives. Is that something to look forward to?
Not at all. That's not going to happen. It's not what we want to do. We've got completely different political philosophies from Reform. We're going some things in terms of managing our borders properly, but in terms of key things like, for example, the economy, we're the only party now that is right of centre on the economy. The Reform Party is very left-wing on the economy. The child benefit, the cap on child benefits to 2 children is one of the policies, in the lifting of that, is one of the policies that Nigel Farage and Reform wanted to adopt. We don't agree that shifting the burden of taxation onto people who are in work and really with the purpose to increase benefits to people out of work or working in limited hours is the right thing to do. That balance is completely wrong. So there are many things fundamentally we disagree with. We're focusing on what we're doing, which is we've got an excellent leader in Kemi Badenoch. She's got the strength, the backbone to lead this country. That's what we need right now, and making sure we have sensible economic policies that encourage people back into work, but also we protect our borders. They're all strong policies that we have, and we're trying to make sure that people understand what it would mean to have a future Conservative government, which I think would be the best thing this country could have.
But Kevin, as you know, you're way down in the polls, and just the day after Nigel Farage said that, it was reported, a donor gave them £9 million. It's one of the largest ever donations to a political party. So it sounds like that individual likes the idea of there being a Conservative Reform Pact.
Well, I don't know if they do or not, but the reality is our donors ourselves have been very generous. The Conservative Party, they believe in what we're about. We're sensible management of the economy, that's critical. Being centre-right on the economy, that's the kind of policies that certainly our donors, and we've raised a huge amount over the last 12 months. We were certainly the leading party in terms of donations raised over the first 6 months of this year. So we appreciate that, and that helps us to get our message out there that the Conservative Party is the only game in town if you want somebody who really knows how to run a strong economy.
The last one on reform, I promise. Nigel Farage has again been accused this morning of using racist language, behaving in an offensive way while at school. He's defended that, saying it was done without malice, and looked at broadcasters to not be hypocritical. I mean, when you think about the way that Nigel Farage has behaved, is this a person that you think you could in any way work with?
Well, listen, people said all kinds of things decades ago, and but I think what I've read about Nigel Farage saying are pretty abhorrent if that was true. I don't know what's true, to be honest, and I think it would be sensible for Nigel Farage to have a conversation with these people who are making these allegations. But we're dealing with the reality today. I think what's most important in terms of people, the people today, the people we represent, are making sure we get the cost of reduce the cost of living, that we make sure people can access good jobs, that we secure our borders, that we tackle some of the key issues. We want a stronger economy and stronger borders. That's what we stand for, and that's what we're focusing on as a party.
Now, you'll know that the government have decided to cancel some mayoral elections coming up. They say they're doing that so that those localities can conclude their local government reorganisation. I mean, that sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it, to give them the time till 2028 to sort themselves out before holding the vote?
I got 3 years away. I mean, it's chaotic. I mean, it was only last week that the Labour government was saying that they would be holding elections next year for the mayors. So it's all over the place right now, and I think it's shambolic. The reshuffle that happened earlier this year, of course, when Angela Rayner left the scene, that a new Secretary of State, you've got a new local government minister. I really think they're all over the place and don't quite know what they're doing. So I don't think it's right to postpone elections like this. It's undermining democracy. Elections are the very fundamental part of democracy. It's the wrong thing to do. We want those elections to take place.
And something off topic, Kevin, but since I've got you and since it's on the news agenda for today, Eurovision, those 3 countries deciding they're going to boycott Eurovision next year. The BBC and, of course, the UK are still going to be taking part. But do you understand why those countries are deciding to do this? They see there being a double standard. They're concerned about Israel's actions in Gaza, Ireland, Slovenia, the Netherlands and Spain, saying that they will boycott the contest. What do you think of that decision?
Well, I've read and comprehend the reasons, of course. I don't agree with them. Israel is an ally. It's a friend of the United Kingdom. And I think, of course, you can disagree with some of the actions of the Israeli government in terms of its actions in Gaza. And they should always seek to be proportionate in any action they take in Gaza, particularly against innocent civilians. But the reality is that the Israeli government is one entity. The Israeli people are another, and I think it's wrong to say that everybody in Israel is connected with the Israeli government. So that's why I think they're wrong. The Eurovision Song Contest is something that should be there to unite us. Music, something is that they can unite us, and in this world, it's very important we focus wherever we can on the things that unite us, and I think that's what this song contest is all about.
All right, Kevin, you've been very patient with me this morning. Thanks so much for making the time. It was good to speak to you. Kevin Holland-Raitt there, Red Chair of the Conservative Party. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, so many important issues there, many of which we'll hear more of through the day, and not least that child poverty strategy. We'll get plenty more reaction throughout the day here on Sky News. Also ahead, we're going to be speaking to grooming gang survivor Fiona Goddard ahead of a Sky News documentary exposing the full scale of exploitation. That's coming up shortly. Now, a young grooming gang survivor has told Sky News she felt she had to agree to her abuser's demands because she was afraid that she would die.
Yeah, Danielle Fitzgerald is in a new Sky News documentary with other girls who were also victims of abuse.
Well, she said she did what she had to survive because she thought she may never make it out of the house that she was held in, and a warning that some of what she says may be distressing.
You can't just say, right, I'm going home today. There's no home. They know you ain't got no home because you told them you're from care. Once they've given you something, you always owe them something back in return. So it's like, well, hang on a minute, I gave you alcohol, or I gave you weed, or I let you stay here. You ain't going nowhere. Like, where's the payback here? Daily, they would obviously rape us. It was one of them, obviously it was multiple of them, and you couldn't really say, no, you can't do nothing because you can die in that house and you don't know if you're ever going to come out of that house anyway, so you just have to do what they tell you to do to be able to survive, really. There's been so many people that I've had sex with and I haven't even opened my eyes because they're the most horrors people ever and I don't even want to look at them. I even got offered once that you can put a bag over their head if you don't want to see what they're like when they're having sex. No, that's not what I want to do. I just want to close my eyes.
Well, we can now speak to Fiona Goddard. She's a survivor of a grooming gang who resigned from the inquiry panel that's been set up by the government. We'll come on to speak about that in a moment, Fiona, but morning to you. Thank you very much for making the time to speak to us. First of all, I know that you've seen the documentary. I wonder what you made of what you saw.
I firstly want to say that I'm so proud of Scarlett for the hard work she's put into this. She's done incredible. I think the first thing I recognised was that even though these girls' experiences were more recent than mine, there's still so much similarities between the way that the abuse worked and the experiences we all experienced. It was quite hard to realise that this is still going on to such a large scale in exactly the same ways. Near the back end of my abuse, I did see the change from being targeted in the streets to social media being used, and it's horrible to know that that's escalated even further.
Well, yes, because, morning to you, Fiona, there's been a lot of attention on some of those past cases in Bradford where you were, but also in Rochdale and Telford and Rotherham, for example. But this documentary really highlights that it's not a problem that's gone away. And you said that some of what came out in the documentary really chimes with your own experience. Expand on that a little bit more. I mean, they talk about how female groomers, for example, often got them involved. They talk about the use of social media, which you mentioned as well. Are there lots of issues that you have discovered feel the same as when you were being abused?
Yeah, even down to some of the language that was used towards the girls by the men, or the way that the abuse itself seemed to happen, the way the experiences they described in the actual rapes and stuff was all very similar to the same type of way they used to target us back then and treat us back then. I think the online part of it, the online element, is adapting so much as more different types of social media open up. At the back end of mine, it was Facebook that started, and I know that when the police gained access to my Facebook account, there were hundreds of men trying to contact me through Facebook. So it is really sad to see that that's been left unchecked, and more social media means has opened up for these girls to be targeted through without much monitoring of it. But there is a lot of similarities, even between like the responses that they described from police forces, being described as, you know, causing trouble or troublemakers, or feeling like they weren't worth any response from the police forces. That's still very similar to how we were treated years before these girls ever even experienced abuse.
Yeah, and that sort of lack of trust from the authorities towards you, it really telling, because it's obviously in your case and it's still happening now, and there is still a lack of trust, isn't there, in being able to find out why these sort of things happen, why they're allowed to happen so far, and trying to stop them from happening. As we said, as we introduced you, Fiona, you resigned from that panel that was set up by the government to look into grooming gangs. You said that you resigned because you didn't have trust in those that were leading it, that you thought there might be a conflict of interest as well. Do you still feel that? And in the time since you resigned, I think it was the back end of October, beginning of November, have you had any contact from the government to try and get you back onto the panel to work towards trying to get that thing up and running?
So, firstly, no, I haven't had any contact from anyone in the government. I haven't had... I was hoping that they would arrange a meeting between me and the other resignees to be able to actually listen to our concerns and take them on board, maybe even put in some effort to reassure us, but there's been no attempts at all. I do still feel as though the inquiry is not as understood. I feel like the people that are trying to design it do not actually understand the grooming gangs and the networks, the organised crime involved, the fact that it is its own subsection of crime, it is distinguishable from different types of child sexual exploitation, and it also had its own responses from services that only specifically happened in these types of cases on a mass scale. I think they need to put more work into understand and recognise exactly what the issue is that a lot of us are talking about. Like, it is specific to these types of crimes, and that's what needs looking into, is further investigating all the information to do with these crimes that have for so long gone undocumented or no one's looked into them, as well as looking at the organised networks and understanding that this isn't just lone isolated incidents, it is an organisation that's spanning across the whole of the UK.
And we still don't know when this inquiry will be up and running. They're still to find a chair for it. Is there anything that those setting it up could say to you to persuade you to go back on that survivors panel?
Right now, no. I think I would maybe reconsider once there is an independent chair and the Home Office and the government have completely stepped back from it. And once we've got an outline of the terms of reference, so then I've got some idea of what the scope's going to be in the remit. I think until then, I don't really want to be involved because I feel like there was a lot of manipulation and survivors were being used to hide behind for excuses of making certain decisions that most survivors weren't even comfortable with. I don't want to be manipulated or used to try and cover up this issue any longer. I want it to be an open and honest conversation that gets to the bottom of the issues and works to put things in place that does prevent these crimes from continuing to be out of control in many cities up and down the country.
OK, Fiona, look, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you for having the strength to talk to us. We really do appreciate it. It's important that these stories are told, which is why, of course, we've got this documentary out later on today, fronted by Scarlett, as you say. We do appreciate your time, Fiona, and perhaps we can speak again soon. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really powerful watch, that.
It is.
We do urge people to give that a watch later on tonight.
It's on at 9, as you can see, and it's also on our website right now.
Yeah.
So you can watch that for yourselves.
Now, though, something completely different. We're joined by comedian Matt Ford, who's defying calamity in his latest tour. It's coming up actually very shortly.
It certainly is.
Looking forward to talking to him.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped. We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Right, I'm looking forward to this next guest. Matt Ford is a comedian, podcaster. What else? You have all sorts. Commentator,
radio,
philosopher, the whole thing.
And You'll do anything, basically.
And it turns out we grew up not far from each other in Nottingham as well, and you're a Forest fan, which makes me very, very happy. Very pleased to have you on this morning, Matt.
Has there been a show where you haven't mentioned Nottingham Forest?
No, there hasn't, no. And there won't be as well. We spoke when you were at Edinburgh Festival.
That's right,
didn't we?
yeah.
in the summer. I hope that show went well.
It did,
all
thank
good?
You very much.
Excellent stuff. And now you're here because you've got your podcast tour and your stand-up tour.
Yes, so the show that I did in Edinburgh, Defying Calamity, is going on tour from January to June next year. 51 dates across the UK, where it's a mix of impressions of people like Keir Starmer and Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, and a bit of personal stuff. I had cancer a couple of years ago, and feel very fortunate to still be here. And that, because it was spinal surgery, it's led to a few changes to my body. So I get it's basically just a new way to do poo, bum, and woolly jumps. Say that. But now they've got like an emotional angle because I'm a brave survivor. Plus, topical political stuff.
But on that serious note, though, has it changed your approach to what you do, or your comedy, or your life?
Everything.
Well, definitely it's comedy, yeah, because I always just did political impressions and a few sporting ones and pop culture ones. I never really did stand up about myself, and I just thought. At the start of the last tour, I was on walking sticks because I had the base of my spine removed, so I was still having physio to walk. So I thought I can't come out on walking sticks and not mention why. And it was a really good creative challenge, really, to think, well, I've been through this thing, and it really helped me kind of process it. Was if you're lying there in agony and you think, well, I might get a couple of gags out of this.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going through.
It's material.
I think so, yeah, and I think that was something I would never have really done without going through that. And then, I think if you talk about difficult things you've been through in your life, it's not necessarily that it's only for people that have been through that, but I think anyone struggling with anything So it's like, well, he's been through cancer and he's had the spine carved in half and he seems all right. Or
if he can do it, exactly.
Maybe I can be as deluded as him one day, and that's...
There's also that humour in the darkness as well, I suppose, that you can kind of draw on. I mean, I know that some people do find that kind of comedy quite touching because it kind of speaks to us parts of our sort of thoughts that perhaps we're not really comfortable going to, and finding something funny in something that's so dark. Yeah, some truth of it, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I always try and weave it all... I don't want it to be too clunky and be like, now I'm going to talk about politics. So I've got a routine about one of the consequences of the surgery I had is erectile dysfunction, so I'm currently having treatment for that, which in itself is kind of like a funny world, which I won't go into too much detail.
It's early in the morning, man. We can do that later on.
But I think, who would I rather have as my erectile dysfunction doctor? Would I rather have Keir Starmer or Donald Trump?
Excellent.
And, you know...
The premise is great.
So then Keir Starmer obviously would be, the reality is, it's going to be very difficult. The nerve damage is severe. I don't think you'll ever get the sort of erections you used to ever get. Whereas Trump would be, I think it's going to get bigger than it ever was, and I think it's going to be fantastic. I think you're going to make a lot of people very happy. I'm excited what you're going to do with it.
So I know which doctor you're going to pick out of the two of those, right?
Yeah, I guess you could maybe make a political point that if politics about how you make people feel, then I understand the attraction of people like Trump because it's entertaining, it's a show, but do those people actually...
It's almost boosterism, isn't it? That we had from a politician here not long ago, that everything was going to be great.
Well, all that... I think the thing is, if people feel like their lives are getting better, then it's fine. But, Boris Johnson, I was just... He felt very... He was just like him. And can I just pay tribute by the wonderful Sky News? Yes, I'll do it in the morning. It was like... It felt like the boosterism was basically all just his rather than for the country.
That was excellent.
And is it a good time for political satire at the moment? Is it kind of... Have you got lots of rich characters to impersonate?
Loads. And I think you've got... I mean, I was sort of sad that Angela Rayner... I think Angela Rayner will be back.
Oh, yeah.
But, I thought Angela Rayner was a great character to do, do you know what I mean? She's that party girl and goes out and everything. And you need... If you're doing impressions, you need people who give you different... Like, Trump can be outrageous. Farage can be outrageous. Starmer, obviously, more buttoned up, more serious, so then you're getting comedy out of the awkwardness of that. Ed Miliband, frankly odd. So you need all those different characters that you can bring to life.
I hear he's quite funny, though, Ed Miliband. I was listening to a podcast of Sam and Anne the other day saying he gave a speech at the Spectator party and he was apparently quite hilarious.
He has got really good, I would sort of describe it as like camp comedy...
Interesting.
...energy. He's got a little bit of, quite booing.
Yeah, OK.
Campus. There's that sort of charm to characters.
Have you ever impersonated a politician to their face?
Yeah, a few times. I did Tony Blair to him and he said, look, I never thought, by the way, that I particularly sounded like that, but my kids came to see and said, look, Dad, he's got the mannerisms and everything, so there we are.
Brilliant. And I mean, have you spoken to all of them as well? I was going through the list on the podcast. I know you've got quite a few names on there, but I mean, literally everyone he's had on the podcast, and you haven't done all your impressions to all of them, but have you learnt a lot from because it's a broad range of people as well. It's not just people from the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. It's a broad range of people you speak to.
Yeah, I'm fascinated in politics and politicians, and I think taking my personal politics out of it, I find that a lot of them are very impressive people. And I don't think that is exclusively a left-right thing. I think a lot of them really want the country to be a better place. They have tremendous stamina. So I'm interested in talking to all these different people. I find them on the whole to be very impressive people, but impersonating them to their face, I remember doing William Hague to his face, and actually when you're opposite them, you notice he does a sort of hum in between words that I never really detected. And I think I said, well, William, often you'll go very low and then very high. And he said, oh, well, I've never really known. So it's a bit awkward for them, it's caricature.
Oh, Matt, we could talk to you all day. Although I am nervous, the longer we talk to you, you'll start impersonating us. So maybe we should
take us in a very respectful way.
But good luck with the tour. Lovely to see you. Thanks very much.
You ready?
Yes. Excellent. Sticking with football, the World Cup draw is happening later. It's at 5 o'clock UK time. Rob Harris has this story.
This is for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well.
Of all the world leaders who've been inside here at the White House since Donald Trump returned for a second term in power, no one has been here more often than Gianni Infantino.
Probably the most respected man in sports.
But he doesn't head
a country. He leads FIFA, World Football's governing body, and there's been so much intrigue about how this close alliance is built between Infantino and Trump. At the heart of it is the World Cup next year, with Infantino wanting those close government ties to ensure the tournament passes off successfully, and President Trump seeing what an opportunity it is having the world's biggest sporting event. He knows what Trump wants to hear, just recently publicly backing his political agenda for change.
He says what he thinks. He says actually what many people think as well, but maybe don't dare to say, and that's why he's so successful. Right. We should all support what he's doing, because I think he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
When you go all in, it can be hard to distance yourself. So there's been no hint of criticism when Trump has been threatening to take World Cup matches away from Democrat-run cities he believes are not safe.
If we think there's going to be a problem, we'll... Johnny, can I say we will move? I don't think you're going to have this problem, but we're going to move the event to some place where it's going to be appreciated and safe.
Yeah, well, I think safety and security is the #1 priority.
I asked a Seattle World Cup official about Trump disparaging them. Is your city a
Absolutely not. Our city is amazing.
Does it not annoy you?
Our city is extremely safe, and we know folks will see that when they come out to visit next summer.
They'll discover which teams will visit after Friday's World Cup draw, which is being attended by Trump. An event designed to please the president, indulging his passions. To win a peace prize, one's being handed out by FIFA after his frustrations about being denied the Nobel version. And even the 70s disco group The Village People will be there to perform his campaign song YMCA. Expect the Trump dance, expect the unexpected. But one of soccer's most prominent Trump backers told me there's nothing wrong with the World Cup being politicised like this. Is it going to be a bit of a Trump show?
No, I mean, sports are inherently, I think, political. And so, obviously with, our president so heavily invested and involved, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive thing. And I'm certain that, he loves a good show.
A show that should also be about Canada and Mexico as well. This super-sized World Cup being staged across 3 countries, but it all seems very much about Donald Trump. Rob Harris, Sky News, Washington.
We'll have more from Rob and team at around 5 o'clock UK time as that draw is unveiled in DC.
A little bit nerve-wracking, let's be honest, but must-see TV. Stay tuned, all the top stories coming up for you next.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Sky News Today. It is 10 o'clock. I'm Samantha Washington with your headlines. The government unveils plans to lift 500,000 children out of poverty, but charities say that they don't go far enough. Vladimir Putin continues his trip to India while